This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and together we have a shared vision for success in business and our personal lives. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their process. We intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. And today, we're coming to you from a new room. This is not Sander's basement. This is not the podcast studio at Florida Tech. This is a new room. We're trying to find a little bit of a better studio for recording that maybe has better lighting or better audio. So we'll see how it turns out. This might be the first and last time that you see us here. But we like to start each podcast with a brief update of where we're at in our life, in our business, so that when we look back on this, we get a rough idea of where we were in our lives at this moment. I've got a couple for both, but I'll let you start.
Cool. So I guess this is the first thing on my mind. I took a small break for once and actually went to West Palm Beach and saw Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Gay.
Sorry. I guess we were doing business updates. But that's the first thing that popped in my mind.
Okay.
But otherwise, in terms of business stuff, we've been progressing the business that we're expanding.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast load has lightened, which is thankful. We did some shorts last week, so got those done and dusted up on, TikTok and whatever. I'm happy with the progress we've been making. I think it was this week that we actually met with our investor as well, or chatted a little bit with him. Or was that last week? That was last week.
Yeah,
it feels like this week, but
yeah.
It all blends together. But there is progress being made. I think that it is not an unreasonable hope to have our actually boots on the ground really going after it within the next 1 to 2 months. So that's promising and makes me happy.
I think that we'll be driving around looking at places in the next several weeks.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I think that hopefully we will have settled on our spot within the next 2 months.
Yep, I agree.
Which is, it makes the 9 to 5 work feel just a little bit less pressing.
Yeah.
And a little bit less important, which I enjoy.
Last week we talked about how fucking difficult it can be to continue grinding at something when you don't know when the end is in sight.
Yeah.
And now we're getting to the point where we can hear the crowds. We know we're almost at the end of the race course. It's coming to a close.
Yes.
Thank God.
Exactly.
This week I've done a lot of work researching grants, because private investor money is great, but taking out equity or having a repayable loan both fall short to free money grants from the government. And the difference between grants and loans, for those who don't know, is the government will give businesses grants to stimulate that area of business in their community. That's free money that doesn't have to be repaid most times. Sometimes a government will give a grant that's really a loan, which does need to be repaid. So there are 3 different ways to get money for a business. The first is from a private investor who gives you money that you have to pay them back on. That is frightening to me, because then you're definitely on the hook for money. Sometimes even if your business shuts down, you can still be liable for it. But if you form your business correctly, you usually aren't. So that can be a private investor or a bank. Then you have an equity loan, which is where you work with a private investor. This is not a bank. They give you money in exchange for equity in their business, and then every month you pay them their dividends, or whatever your pay period is. And then the third is a government grant, which is just free money. You don't have to repay it at all. I've been looking into that, but they are tough to find. A lot of them are structured towards minority members and women in the community, and we are neither. So it's tough to come across ones that we even qualify for, and even then they're specified. A lot of them are in the research field, like R&D type stuff, which again is not the section for our business. But in addition to looking into the grants, we've also started to develop a little bit of a clearer picture for our milestone B, which is after the business gets up and running, what are we going to do from there? How do we scale it? And what's the next step after that? Not that we're getting ahead of ourselves and, our eyes aren't getting too big for our stomachs, but we're just hungry. And
yeah. I think this came to mind too while you were chatting. We talked a little bit about what the future holds in terms of the business. So did a little bit of, brainstorming or dream work, essentially,
right,
on that sort of thing. And worked on some of the digital media items that we have, as well as some organization in regards to those. So a little bit of more specific progress there that I can give insight on.
And then importantly, in the last few days, I have been looking into similar businesses to the one that we're going to be structuring. And I've noticed a lot of shortcomings in those businesses and clear flaws that I think fortunately you and I had already considered and won't be making. But it's just shocking to me that so many businesses can open and make these mistakes without care. They don't give a shit. They just 100%. Make these mistakes without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it really demonstrates the Hormozi principle of people start businesses because they know that they make money, not know why they make money.
Right.
So those are my business updates. For life updates, I have gotten back to my contact list. I took a break from it for a little while because it was just sickening. I have like 600 contacts, and for each person, I'm writing down a brief description of them, our last conversation, when that conversation was, if their number's still updated, and then I'm changing their profile picture if it's someone that I know there is updated. And that's useful because say we need, I don't know, a hairstylist for our new business, right?
Yeah.
I can go to my contacts app on my phone and just type in the word hairstylist, and then whoever I know that is in that industry, it'll pop up in their bio, and it should be really easy for us to get to people that we need to get to.
Yeah.
So I've been back to updating that. I'm almost done with it. I learned a trick for doing my beard care because I'm trying to grow a beard.
Oh yeah.
And it's working, but not all the way. But I'm using different products on it to try and simulate more hair growth because a bunch of products actually work. My friends have used them and they work, and they're working for me just slowly. But when I'm clean shaven, I forget to use them. But if I have shitty facial hair like I do now, I don't like how it looks, but it reminds me to use the products every night because every night I look in the mirror and I'm like, God, what the fuck are you doing? And then I remember to use the products. And the last few days, I've been sleeping in like crazy. I had to call out of work a couple days, and then this morning I woke up at like fucking 11:30. I have been going to bed late, like 3 or 4, but I think I've been sick. I think I'm sick right now, and I just had no fucking
Maybe
idea.
don't get me sick.
I mean, I can't help it.
Give me a mask.
I don't know. I'm not wearing a fucking mask, but it's just like, I don't even think it's a cold. Like, I think it's even less than that. I think it's, I recognize that if I push too hard for too long, then I get to feel this way. It's just like run down, like a little ragged. And normally it's like, I push really hard for 6 months and then I get sick. But I think I've been pushing not really hard, but like 80% for like a year. And now it's catching up to me. And it's like, hey, bro, sleep a little more every night. So that sucks. But do you have any other life updates apart from your break?
Not really. I'd love to dive into this next portion of the podcast.
Sure.
I'd like to introduce Omar. Omar Bawazir is a student at Florida Tech here. We were actually...
Panthers.
I'm sorry?
Said go Panthers.
Yeah, go Panthers. Go Panthers. Mason and I also both went to Florida Tech, as Mason is repping on his shirt.
It's a brand new shirt.
Very nice. Very nice.
I love the new logo though. It actually looks really pretty compared to
so
the...
much.
Why? I think it looks better than the one.
I just don't like it. I don't like it. It's too cartoony for me. I don't know. I like the shirts that just say Florida Tech rowing on them, but in my time rowing, it was like not the golden age for Florida Tech rowing, so we didn't have a ton of money to work with, and I didn't get any Florida Tech rowing branded merchandise in my time on the team. So after I graduated, the new coach who helped us through the cuts and the reinstatement, he was like, "Hey, I'm getting new merch, and I'll give you some." And I was like, "Awesome." So,
but
happy to have it.
Omar has worked in the retail industry since he was 9 years old, including the Commercial District Refinery Company as a cashier and a sales assistant, and then worked at a bank to better understand B2B businesses, or sales between businesses, essentially, is what that is. He's going to Florida Tech on scholarship from the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Education and is shortly graduating with a major in Aeronautical Science and Flight and a minor in Aviation Safety with an associate in Air Traffic Control to go into the aviation industry. So he's got a lot that he's working towards, working very hard. Almost there, going to be graduating in the winter, and he plans to go back to Saudi Arabia to work as an airline pilot after he is done. So that's my introduction for you. I'd like to dive into a few questions just so the audience can get to know you a little bit better. You're our first guest on the podcast, so it's kind of like a, milestone moment for us in Vision 79. And I'd like to ask you, what was your family life back home? You talked with me a little bit about like your father and the rules you had growing up and how maybe that differentiated from, what you've seen from the US culture. You had a cool Pepsi story and almost becoming a pro soccer player. So you got a few little tidbits. I just wanted you to share some of those stories so the audience can get to know you a little bit.
Well, yeah. First, thank you so much for the great introduction. That's a very professional introduction. I started working when I was 9 years old. Yeah. I didn't actually have an option, Like when I was 9 years old, my father just tried to take me to work with him, to just observe, learn from him, follow his footsteps. Not much in he wanted me to become something, as more like he wanted me to just get used to going to work,
Yeah.
Not getting things the easy way. It's not like I cry, I want something, buy it for me, dad, here you are. No, my dad actually like wanted to make sure that he teaches me that if you want to get something, that you have to work your way through it.
Dude,
and then earn it.
My ex-girlfriend, her younger brother had a mood disorder, and he was that. He was like he would cry and be like, buy it for me. Number one time, they had just bought him like an Xbox. This family did not have a ton of money. They bought him an Xbox. Then he was like, the next day, they were like, okay, it'll be calm for a few weeks. And the next day, he was like, a new game came out and I want it. They were like, dude, we don't have the money. And he broke a window.
Wow.
He got so pissed off, he broke a window.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say one of the elements or one of the parts is that iPads and like having these electric devices through like around kids. And I think that just gave us a new outcome of children, and like people are more attached. They're getting way more aggressive. Like children in the past, they were like, okay, they cry a couple minutes and that's it, they're quiet after that. But nowadays they're getting like angry,
entitled little kids.
Yeah. And it's like entitled to iPads and technology, which is a little bit weird, but it's definitely unique because like we're living in a different lifetime than before. And I think like, yes, with different technologies, new outcomes will come. And we just have to learn how to educate and teach through these technologies that we have. It's a blessing and a curse. Like it's a double-edged sword.
Here in the U.S., like at least Mason and I, I'm sure you would agree, have seen a huge difference between Gen Z, which is what we are, right, and Gen Alpha is the next one, right? Have you seen that, in terms of like iPad use and like, how bratty kids can be, for a lack of a better word? Do you see that same sort of change happening in Saudi Arabia as well, or in other parts that you've traveled to or explored, or is it kind of centralized to the U.S. more strongly?
I mean, yes, I do see kids all growing up with iPads, iPhones, like devices like this to like entertain on.
Yeah.
However, like it really comes down to the family, how they want to raise their children, because it's really about like the family structure. The foundation of the family is the strongest thing that could ever be for a child. Like if you want the child to grow up and have certain skills or certain learnings, you want them to go through different experiences. And now with technology, it's like just get on the iPad, see somebody traveling around the world, spending a ridiculous amount of money, and children are not aware of how to get to that point where you have all that money and how to spend it too. So it's more like, as we said, crying, begging for stuff, and it's just unhealthy, I would say, way of raising children.
You think kind of like the different people of the world, now that the internet is accessible by anyone who's over 6, those different avenues that people have taken are so accessible to kids, but kids aren't able to differentiate between what these different avenues take. So it makes it a lot harder for them to grow up and kind of respect the position they're in and understand how to work hard to get those things. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
And I really think that the parents are the ones who like should make sure how to install these things in the children. It's more like within the family. It's like, what is the child spending their time doing? What type of content they're watching?
Sure.
What type of things are they encountering? And all of these stuff, it's just plays a huge role with children and the way they grow up. And especially that you guys like to talk about mentality. How is the mentality of children are going to become? And mentality is something, or the mindset is something that shifts throughout the time. So you adapt different things to make your mindset as powerful as you can, so it can benefit you the most in the long term.
I think that I used to hold the perspective that like the difference between our generation and then Gen Alpha, because we shit on them all the time. They're iPad kids and they have short attention span, etc.
I'm an iPad kid at dinner.
Only
at
dinner.
My iPad.
Right,
I do.
Right, but you can control it the rest of the time. You don't have the attention span of a gnat and the memory attention of a goldfish. But our parents probably feel the same way about us because when they grew up, they worked in the fucking coal mines or whatever they're going to tell you, right? And so I would like to say that this generation is no different from the previous one, because everyone has it a little easier than the generation before them, which is the whole point of, living, is to make it easier for your children. But there's a saying that I'm sure you guys are familiar with: hard times make hard men make good times make soft men, and soft men make hard times. And I think that doesn't necessarily span a single generation. So I think that good times could be a period of decades, and the soft times are the times we're in right now. And it's scary to think, especially with some of the AI and things that we'll be talking about later on, is we know that hard times is the next stage in this cycle. What does that look like?
Right.
Yeah.
I think no, go ahead. Go for it.
I would say it would be mysterious because with AI growth is something that we're going to get into later, but it's also like unpredictable.
Right.
And it's just mysterious. We
Yeah.
never know where it's going to go exactly, but all we know is that make yourself able as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and try to take advantage of it. Don't let it take advantage of you.
Yeah. That's why it's important to be a hard man in soft times.
I would agree
And
with
I
that.
actually agree that we are in the soft time that's going to turn into hard time,
Yeah. That's a scary position to be in.
right?
I would argue that it's way better to be a hard man going into good time because you can give back to your children, or even be in the good time and knowing that the next generation is the soft era, because you're probably going to live through the soft era and die before it gets hard again. But I think we're right on the cusp of hard times.
I would agree. Do you think that we all see that these hard times are coming in the United States? Do you think that it is the same in Saudi Arabia as well, where you grew up and spent a lot of your life, or do you think it's kind of more pronounced in the U.S.?
I don't think it's as harsh
Okay.
as in here in the United States. However, we're still like, whatever you experience in one place in the world, at the end of the day, we all live in one earth.
Yeah.
And whatever something that happens somewhere is going to impact other countries, especially when we talk about the United States. Like,
And especially the internet, which is accessible around the world.
exactly. However, still, like, not everybody have access to the internet,
True.
like in different parts of the world. But as a superpower, the United States, whatever happens here really have a significant effect on any other country in the world. And I think that could be, if it was directed well, I think it will have a positive impact. Like, I am a person who really wish the United States become the greatest version of itself. Not just for the sake of my friends and the people I love here in the United States. And I do have a lot of people who I look to as family, It's like more like I have brothers. I have people like I really rely on. I really spent good quality of time with, and I want them to have nothing but the best. And when the United States get to like a great position, I think the whole world is gonna get impacted positively. And maybe you guys here do not see the impact on other countries, but people in other countries look at the United States and really pray that it can get to a good position so they can benefit from that too.
So why did you decide to come to the United States? Was it for that hope of trying to help this country kind of, give a part and get an education here and kind of take the pieces that you love and then bring them back to Saudi Arabia, right? Because I know that you're going back, right? So you're not choosing to stay here. So I guess it's like, was there a point in time where you wanted to stay here for a longer time, or did you always think about going back? Or like, what was your kind of overarching goal beyond just an education for coming here specifically?
I love this, and I think it's a journey, especially when you graduate from high school. It's like, what do you really want to do after high school? Who is the person you're trying to become?
Yeah.
The only thing I knew after graduating high school is that I wanted to be overseas. I wanted to go overseas. We have a saying in Arabic called al-ghurba madrasa. So it's like being overseas is like a school by itself, not just specifically going to X school or Y school. It's just you being abroad, away from your family, taking all the responsibilities. For me, especially, like, I came from Saudi. I've never done laundry back home. Never. And
You guys just don't wash your clothes? What do you mean by that?
no, we have maids.
Got
It's like it's a different way of raising children. And I always say it, and I tell my Saudi friends a lot, is that we are very spoiled in a good way, though. Like, we're spoiled to the point that we don't have to do everything. It's not everything on your shoulder, but coming here, having all these responsibilities on you is a significant thing for you to grow. It's like a growth opportunity, You got to take it. You got to learn how to cook, learn how to clean your clothes, have a beautiful, sparkling, clean apartment, and take care of that and maintain it too. It's not that you have to get it to a high level of cleanliness. It's more about maintaining that level too. And for me, growing up, I wanted to be overseas. I knew that. I remember my father always wanted me to go and apply for schools, universities back in Saudi. And I just saw that I would do something different if I go overseas.
Mhm.
And I always seek that. So for my scholarship that I applied for, I tried to avoid updating my dad like day to day. I more like told my oldest brother that's like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I have an interview here, I have a medical check there, and like stuff like that. So with this is my dad wanted me to go to university back home, and I just wanted to see what I would do abroad, overseas. And I think coming to the United States, it's like the American dream, you know, like, come on, you can start your business, you can start from zero and become a hero. All these stuff. It's like I came here, I was like so excited. I was so open to the idea that I'll just use my networking skills, I'll try to improve it, I'll see where the future takes me, you know? It's like, don't have that much expectations, but know that wherever you end up, you want to end up in a good place, and you want to not lose any opportunity that might take you to a higher level. So coming to the United States was a bit of adventure, especially through the process that I applied for a scholarship and all of that. And I'm thankful for every single thing that I've done towards this scholarship. And being part of Florida Tech is a great thing. However, back home, actually, this reminds me of a funny thing. It's like in the family, there are some expectations, you know. Every society, every family, they have certain expectations. And the feeling of those expectations for me during high school, it was more like you got to be one of three things. So you either become a doctor, you become an engineer, or you become a disappointment. These are your three options. You choose. And for me, I wanted to be a pilot. That's something that my mom installed in me since a very young age, and I was like really passionate about. And I loved it. Honestly, talking about mindset and stuff like that, I always knew that if I go for medical school to become a doctor or go to an engineering school to become an engineer, I feel like I would do a decent job. I'll get the job done. I'll study. I'll put the effort in order to make it happen. However, I felt like it's ridiculous to go to like medicine school for 7 to 10 years or 15 years, you name it, if you want to become like a specialist. It's like, to me, it's like, no. There are so many different ways of living than spending 15 years in school.
Yep. It's interesting. My brother wanted to become a doctor and also a pilot. So he's getting his undergraduate at Embry-Riddle in aerospace physiology, which qualifies you to take the MCATs, but he's not taking the MCATs because he wants to be a fighter pilot. Aerospace physiology is the same degree that you can take and be an RTC to become a fighter pilot. So when he's done serving, he can qualify for the MCATs. He's just going to study on his own, take the MCATs, and then go into medical school, which is fucking wild because you're going to become a pilot, do that for 10 years, then you're going to go to medical school and then do that for 10 years, and then you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be 65 years old as a first-year doctor? That's crazy.
He's going to be taking History 1 at 65 for his fourth degree.
Yeah. What's even crazier, though, is the fact that you guys like didn't have, like the maid concept to me is so foreign because I grew up probably like upper middle class. So we didn't have maids or anything, but I had a stay-at-home mom who would do everything for us. And I remember in, I think, third grade, I made the decision. I was like, I want to start waking myself up. I'm going to set an alarm. I want to start making my own breakfast in the morning. I don't want you to do it for me. You know, I was fine with her like driving me to school and stuff, but I was like, I want to do my own laundry and make my own food and like do my own things and be my own person. And my brother was the polar opposite. So my mom hated me because I didn't want her to do anything for me anymore. So I'm basically taking away her ability to be a mother. And she hated my brother because he relied on her to do absolutely everything. And then when we both went to college, for some reason, she expected me to be like, you know, a fuck up, I guess. They were terrified that I was going to be a frat guy because I'm very personable and stuff. And they were like, dude, if he doesn't grow, he's going to get lost in the sauce. And they expected my brother to be like, you know, like put together. But when my brother graduated, I remember they visited his dorm in freshman year. And when they came back, they were like, dude, that was the grossest room we've ever been in. Like, dude, all the dishes are unclean. The shower's filthy. He hasn't cleaned his sheets yet. He rewears clothes without doing laundry. Like, it's interesting because I wasn't given the option. I was given the option of having a maid, essentially, in my mom, and then intentionally turned it down to learn those things on my own before needing to. And my brother pushed that off, delayed it. And then when the time came where he had to do it on his own, he just didn't. Like, he just wasn't good. Like, those are things that he just will not do. Maybe he's changed since then, but my parents came and saw my apartment for the first time yesterday. First time in like 6 months since I moved. Yeah. And they were like, this is nice. Like, this is a nice place. Like, we weren't really expecting this to be so clean. And I was like, the fuck, dude?
It's interesting that you raised that point because my mom, when I lived half custody with my mom and dad, and when I would be at my mom's house, she'd do everything for me, like breakfast, laundry, sheets, cleaning, all that stuff. And my dad did like a decent majority of it. Like, he'd throw my laundry in with his laundry, or like remind me to like change my sheets or like shit like that. But like, I never really had like a solid, you're going to do everything yourself kind of experience. When I was a kid, I always had like 60% of the stuff done for me at any given time. Right. But then when I went to college, like, I was never an unclean person. Like, I always like my stuff clean. Obviously my apartment's cluttered. It's just because I have a lot of stuff. But like, in terms of like the actual cleanliness, like, I vacuum once to twice a week. I keep my dishes clean. My stuff is neat.
Messy and dirty are different things.
Right. Exactly. And, I did that because I thought about it from the perspective of, do I really want to have people over and have it look like this? Right? Like, that's just not the right thing to do. So I wonder if I think that maybe your growth in how you are raised as a person can have an influence on your habits as an adult. But I also think it could be like a maturity thing, or like a broader perspective mindset thing. Like, if you're narrowed down to like just how you live, even if you grew up with like really good habits to like clean your own stuff and whatever, if you just narrow it down to like, this is just my life and this is my space and no one else can see it, then maybe there's the potential for you to kind of neglect those kinds of things, right? But then if you have a little bit of a broader picture, then maybe you're like, well, I don't want to like have people come over and see like my dirty underwear on the floor and stuff like that, right? Like, I'm not sure if that's like the case with your brother or whatever, but I think it's an interesting thought experiment.
I think my brother and I both don't care what other people think. Like, if my brother had friends over and if I had friends over, we would do the same amount of preparation before they came over, which is nothing, because I don't care what you think of my living space.
Sure.
The difference is my brother is comfortable with dirty clothes on the floor and dirty sheets, and I'm uncomfortable with that.
That's a fair point. I am also uncomfortable with it being dirty. And maybe that's because it was always clean for me. Even though I didn't always clean it myself, it was always clean. Mm-hmm. And it did bother me when it was dirty.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe there's an aspect there too. That's a great point.
I'm not sure. It's so interesting to me that my brother and I took such different paths and ended up at such different areas. And it is so easy. If someone's doing something for you, the easiest route, the path of least resistance, is just to have them keep doing that thing for you, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know where the impetus came in for me to say, stop doing these things for me. I want to do them on my own. Because what fucking 10-year-old wants to do their own laundry? Like, what? I don't know.
That little rebellious nature of like, I want to do it.
I don't know. I don't know where it came from. And I still
that
can't
lawsuit blood in you.
I don't know. Maybe it's just like, I guess everybody becomes independent at some point. Like, puberty hits and then you're like, I want to be my own person. But it wasn't even like I want to be my own person thing. It was, I can't explain it. It was just, I feel like this is something that I need to do on my own. Same with the cars. I got into cars, not because I was interested in cars or racing, but because I was like, oh, I'm 15 and I'm going to own a car next year. If I get a flat tire on the side of the road, my parents don't pick up the phone. I need to know how to change it. So the first thing I learned how to do was oil changes, and then how to fix a flat, and et cetera. And then from there, I was like, this is actually kind of interesting. And I got into what do I do if I have oil leaks and et cetera. And then eventually that stemmed into, well, if I'm doing all this work on the car, I might as well make it fast, and fast cars are cool. And it blew up from there. But it really started with, I need to be able to do this on my own. And I feel like that is what has driven me through all those decisions. And even some of the things that I learned today, like shooting, it's like, I need to learn how to do this for myself because I can't rely on other people to do it for me. It's like how Herbosi says, you should expect it to be harder than everyone else has it and for no one to help you out. It's like kind of feeling. And I don't know where that comes from because I wasn't taught that at all.
I think identifying, if you identify something and you see there is a potential danger to yourself that would damage you as a human being, is that I don't want to be at 3 a.m. stuck on the highway, cannot change a tire. That's like so scary to you. That's what going to give you the initiative of learning by yourself towards how to fix a tire, for example.
Right.
Going back to the college point, is that I really think that college is not just about classes. College is a whole experience that you have to take care of yourself, be on top of your studies, have a clean space, hanging out and find the like-minded people, in the school because, like Florida Tech is like relatively a small school when you compare it to other colleges with like 7,000 active students. And finding the like-minded people is what's important because those are the people you want them around you because you guys share so much similarities together. That's what's going to drive you to perform better. Those are the people who are going to inspire you to do something better, improve yourself in whatever aspect. And going back to your brother, you said you and your brother came from like the same family but took two different paths, right?
Right.
My dad would always, I remember like one time I was talking to my dad and I'm like, we all came from one family. How do we just go to different paths? And he said this. He's like, this is one hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is one family, the arm. But look at the fingers. Those are like the members of the family. Some of them become short, some of them become slightly longer or do more better or less. So it really depends. Like it doesn't mean that the
Some of them fuck themselves.
Yeah.
But I like that analogy.
But yeah, it's like it's not that the family is bad. It's more about what do they do, what experiences they put themselves through to grow whatever they want to get.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. I would love to, I know you mentioned a little bit about your family and talked a little bit about it. I'd love to hear some of the stories that you have from growing up. I know that you mentioned the Pepsi story earlier, which I touched on in my introduction a little bit, or the pro soccer player one is really cool. I'm super enticed by that one. I haven't heard it yet. And then, any sort of family structure and, kind of differences that you've noticed that you could bring to the audience from a completely different perspective from what Mason and I traditionally bring.
Well, yeah, I said we had meat back home. That doesn't mean that I was spoiled or we were rich. I came from a
We still started working at you when you were 9, so you couldn't have been that spoiled, right?
Yes, well, I mean, it was more like teachings in a way, but it actually shaped me. I really believe that it shaped me into the person who I am today.
Yeah.
And with the family, and when we talk about my father, I do believe that I have the best father on earth. Like, there is nobody who can be compared to my father. He's the greatest of all times. And he was very strict. And
My dad could beat up your dad.
What?
I'm kidding. I said my dad could beat up your dad.
No,
and
hell
Santa's
no.
dad can beat off your dad.
Hey.
But yeah, I mean, he was very strict because, raising children is not an easy task, trust me. And a lot of people, they can be great boyfriends, husbands, but are they going to be great fathers? So that's a different question.
My dad was a great boyfriend. I'm just kidding. I'm so sorry.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about the strictness, my dad was very strict. Like we had rules and kind of law in the house, within the household. And one of it was Pepsi. Pepsi was illegal in our house, believe it or not. And that doesn't mean that I can never consume Pepsi. It's just I can never have the balls to buy a can of Pepsi and take it home.
You guys are just like big on Coca-Cola?
No, well, we're not big fans.
You mean no soda at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha.
But it's more like Pepsi because if you avoid Pepsi, maybe you had
they have a bad string of advertisements like Budweiser or
No.
what happened?
I think back then it was the revolution of Pepsi being everywhere you go. You go to a restaurant, you go to a grocery store, you go everywhere. It's just so accessible, especially to children too. And my dad was like, don't drink Pepsi. Nowadays, believe it or not, it's been 4 years or 3 years. 2021 was the last can of Pepsi that I drank. And it was Coca-Cola. It wasn't Pepsi.
Why? Oh, it's just soda.
It's soda, yeah.
Why does your dad hate soda?
Because he believes it's bad for your health. But when he was teaching that, he's like, this cannot be at the house. You guys are not allowed to consume Pepsi. And it was very straight up, And for me nowadays, when I look at it, it's like, I stopped drinking soda by my own free will. Why? Because I realize how much sugar it has, and it's very unhealthy and something that I don't want to be doing. It's been now over 3 years that I haven't drank a can of soda. However, going back then, I used to try to be sneaky about it. So there's this one time in the afternoon after playing football. Please don't say the S word. When I was playing football in the afternoon.
Shit, got it.
Watch out. I don't want to hear it.
I'll say it like football.
Football.
I'll say it like I've been kicked in the head and ate football.
But yeah, I remember that day I played football and then I went to the deli. I got a sandwich and a Pepsi. And then that time, it was about 30 minutes to 45 minutes before my dad would leave to work. So I wasn't expecting him to be leaving, so we're not gonna encounter each other. But then next thing you know, I'm walking next to the house and I hear the garage opens, and I'm like, oh shoot, my dad is leaving.
We've all been there. Garage door opens, you got your dick in your hand, Pepsi in your left.
And then my instant reaction was like, let me hide underneath my cousin's car. And then I hide under the car, like I go like down.
Because you had a fucking can of Coke?
Yes. And then I didn't expect my dad to even take like more like a U-turn. And then he came next to it, like honked the car, rolls down his window. He's like, get off, like, or get out of under the car.
What kind of cars did your dad drive?
Land Cruiser. Yes, a Toyota Land Cruiser.
That's solid.
Yes. It's the same car. He refused to change it. Trust me, we tried to like.
We had maids, we had Land Cruisers, we weren't spoiled. I'd bust it.
Well, Land Cruiser back home is something really common, you know, because like we go to the desert, you know, sometimes you drive up mountains and stuff. So like these big cars are very ideal for us.
I always want to do that in a dune buggy, like go up like a sand dune in a dune buggy. That always looks so fun to me.
In America, the average income is way less, so that's our Jeep Wrangler.
Okay.
You have to go up an incline. If you're a soccer mom, you get a Jeep Wrangler.
You said that's word though.
What?
Soccer, you can't say that.
I don't fucking care. I'm not a sports guy. I'm a motorsports guy. I don't give a shit. I'll disrespect the day and night. I'll disrespect both footballs because I don't give a fuck.
I'm gonna call it soccer ball for the rest of the podcast.
Okay, so you're under the car. You're under the car, and your dad honks his horn.
Yes, and in a really mad tone, he yells, "Get off down under that car." And I get off, and then he looks at me. He didn't leave his car, so he wasn't like super mad or anything. He was just, he realized I'm hiding there. How did he know? I have no clue until today. But he found out. All I know that he found out. I get off the car. He's like, "Give me the cigarettes. Give me the drugs that you have. Show me your pockets." And he didn't leave the car. He's just talking. And I'm like scared. I got everything off my pocket. I swear I have not. I have the Pepsi. I swear I saw it in his eyes. He's like, he had the laugh, but he held it. I think I was so upset. I was so frustrated. I went back home and I think he called my mom too. So like me going to the house, my mom was already like expecting me to come in. She's like, "What happened? What happened?" And I'm like, it just happened. My dad leave to work early, you know, and he called me with a can of Pepsi. And I was upset that I broke the rules, you know. And I had a feeling of sadness, of disappointment on myself because that I broke the law. I committed an illegal thing into my household, you know. And I remember that this story is very significant to me because it really teaches me how the family should run, you know. Like if my dad have things in order, that's because he wants us to follow that. And because if we go through this path, we will end up close to the outcome that he expected us to be. And for every father, you are the boss, you are the manager of this household, and you are the one who is responsible of maintaining it and make sure that nothing bad goes there. So the Pepsi story is always like a funny story.
How did your dad punish you when you broke the rules?
We were good through different stuff. One of them was
no sand dunes for a whole month. No sand dune cruising.
No more Rolls Royce. No driver. You have to drive yourself to school. You're in the Bentley. People are gonna laugh at you.
I wish I was able to drive because I would always tell my dad I need a car to drive, and he's like, "No."
The maids will drive you. So wait, how did he punish you?
But he used different techniques, and one of them was not allowing me to go play football because that was the most thing I was attached to growing up. And it's like every day, that's an everyday activity for me. You know, I'll go in the street, play football with anybody, you know, with my cousins, with the people in my neighborhood. And actually, I grew up in a very humble neighborhood, and the people were like very low income people. So we're not surrounded by any rich people. We're like all kind of stuck together in a place where like you have to learn everything by yourself in order to like to become someone. And even the jobs that we had, like I think maybe teachers, well, I don't believe that we had doctors. I do have 2 doctors in my family, but they all were studying in the medicine school. They were not there, but mostly was like very humble neighborhood, very humble people, not very rich, not like maybe some middle class, but mainly low class.
Right, but bringing it back to the punishment, would he yell at you? Like, what instilled you to follow his rules? What were you afraid of if you broke the rules?
I was afraid of never playing football.
Okay.
Again, technology. He would take my phone from me for like a couple of days, and he would give me the Nokia, the one with the light on top. That was my favorite phone. And my dad used to know it because sometimes he would punish me. He's like, give me your BlackBerry. You remember when BlackBerry were like a big thing? He's like, give me your BlackBerry. Take this phone for a week. This is your punishment. And I would take it. I'll be happy because I will not be texting anybody. If I don't pick up the call, nobody can yell at me because like the phone is not that loud. You can't hear it that much. So my dad was like, sometimes when he get punished by taking away his phone, he actually enjoys it. And I think that pissed him off a little bit more. And he tried to find like different ways to do it. And I think it ended up very well because I would always learn is like, if I'm planning to have my phone in the next month, is I don't have to misbehave within this time period, you know. And especially when you're a teenager, you cannot not misbehave. You have to misbehave a little bit because that's like your nature. You're in that age where like you want to be yourself, break the rules. I want to drive fast. I want to run in the street. I want to play football nonstop, stuff like that. And my dad always he was a little bit against me playing in the street too. So he wouldn't want me to like be outside in the streets, especially around those people, as I told you, like low income people and stuff. So he wanted to make sure that I'm surrounded by the right people, but at the same time, he doesn't take away from me the things that I enjoy, such as playing football.
Well, I think that's something additionally that you touched on in your story too, is that I sense, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was a fear of disappointing the family and not growing up to the values that your father wanted to instill in you from a young age, right? And that strictness that he has or had with you when you were a kid, I think brought a lot of value to how you grew up, but it was unseen value until you aged, right? And so I think that you bring a really great point that like strictness and rules can have a really great benefit for kids growing up, you know, to kind of learn what it means to, you know, kind of learn from someone who has done it before as a parent figure and see the lessons they have learned and then apply those lessons so that you can grow up to be bigger and better than they are and help them when they're older and stuff like that, right? Is that kind of, you know, am I right in that, or do you agree? This is kind of what I'm saying makes sense.
Yes, I think it's close to accurate. It's more like my dad made it out of nothing. Like he was really struggling through his life. He wanted to build something not just for him, but for his children as well. And for me, I didn't learn that until I became older. And I think that every time I look back is that I'm not just misbehaving or disappointing my father. It's more like I'm stepping in the way of the process that he's been doing throughout his lifetime.
Right.
I don't want to.
He's trying to help you, but you're in the way of that help.
Yes, and sometimes it takes you a long time to realize that. You know, it's like you want to be a part of the family. You want to do everything you're capable of. However, at certain age, you will act in a certain way, and that way, when you're a teenager, especially, it's more like reckless way. But the older you get, the more you realize. And this, I think, really helped me to mature at early age because seeing all this sense of responsibility is like, I have older siblings and I have younger siblings. What the older siblings are doing for me, I am expected to do back to my younger siblings. Yeah. And it's always like a teamwork. And that's why, like, I came from a big family, and the role of a big family, I think it's really, really cool because sometimes I have my oldest brother who acts as my father, and I don't mind it. You know, my dad would most likely sometimes act as the grandfather of the family, even though he's my father, but he would act as the grandfather because he's at that age. Right. But it gives us more things to like work within each other. My brother would come check on me. My brother was with me throughout my whole process for the scholarship. When I was, I had to travel a couple times to the capital of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. And when I wanted to travel for the first time, I told my dad I have to travel to do some paperwork. He's like, take your oldest brother with you. And he was like, okay, I'll make like 2 days out of my schedule. Let's go get it done, come back. And it was a great opportunity even for me to hang out with my brother one-on-one. Because as a pilot, I really do believe you don't truly know somebody unless you travel with them. Like knowing somebody within school is one thing. Knowing somebody outside of school while you met through school is another thing. But traveling with somebody, being roommates with somebody, that's a whole different level that makes you realize the quality of the people. It shows more of the characters of people, because sometimes you encounter very limited things with other people. And when you travel or live with somebody, you actually see how they behave like 24/7. And that like opens your understanding of like who you truly are, who that person truly is, and who you guys trying to become.
And so, you said that as a kid, you loved soccer. It was your favorite thing, and you almost went pro. And one thing that you told me off camera, I think it was last week, was that your father convinced you to not go pro, and you're thankful to him for that every single day, which is a really interesting perspective, and something that I think is a little bit different than what maybe at least I have seen, maybe you can say this too, have seen in the United States. Like a lot of children or kids, when they have a dream growing up and then their parents get in their way of that dream, they, hate them for life, right? At least I've seen that before, right? So touch a little bit briefly about, you were about to go pro and then your father stepped in the way, and how that changed, your trajectory forward. And then also you met with the Barcelona soccer team. Yes. Sorry, football team. My apologies. You met with the Barcelona football team. And so you still have this drive, and, you still have this passion. And how did you kind of weave that back into your life in a healthy way where you could continue going to school here and pursuing, becoming a pilot, as well as, still kind of scratching this itch of your love of football?
Well, it's super simple, because when you look at it, if you're a teenager, you're 12, 13 years old, what do you care about the most? Playing, having fun, entertainment, stuff like that. I wanted to be active. I wanted to play football. I got a contract, and that was like, I made it happen. That was the moment that I made it. I can now go pro and all of that. I had all these ambitions, all of these excitements, but then my dad, when he turned it down, he didn't turn it down that I wasn't good enough of a football player. He turned it down because he saw that I could be I can be in a better place in the world and have something significant instead of football. Instead of just dedicating the rest of your life to football, you're gonna do something else in a different path that it will shape you to the person maybe I want to become, and yes, what I want to become, but what he look at me and he thinks I have the skills for. My dad always knew that I never go broke. Like one of the things, I remember my mom was telling me one time that her and my dad were discussing, and my dad was telling my mom, Omar is never broke. Why is that? She's like, he always saves. He learned saving from such a young age. That's when I first started working at 9 years old. I would accumulate, no matter how big the amount of money I get, as long as I show up to work, and at the end of the month I get my paycheck, I would save half of it, for example. And the rest of it, I will try to spend it smart. So like having that skill and developing it from such a young age, from 9 years old, when I came to 18 years old, I was like, I had enough money to do whatever I wanted, kind of. Especially at that age. Like, what do I want? I want to travel. I have enough money for a trip. Do I want to play football? I have enough money to like travel and go back and forth, like go to the field and come back. One of the incentives that my dad used to do is, if you want a new pair of cleats to play football, you have to show up for work for a month. And then you pick the pair and he will pay for it, no matter how much it costs. So this is like one of the things that it's more like you put the effort and then he reimburses you for your effort. And it doesn't necessarily have to like, oh, I'm going to make his business successful, etc. No, it's more like show up, learn the discipline of working, learn how you earn your things before you get it. You don't get things the easy way. You have to work towards getting it. Going back to Barcelona.
Wait, hang on. How did you feel when your dad turned down your contract to play soccer?
At that time, I felt terrible. I was like, my dad hates me. I genuinely felt like my father hates me. And I didn't understand it until I feel like maybe until I came to the United States and I understood how life is like so much you can do. It's not necessarily have to be one thing and one thing only. Like I do see that I can have significant impact in the world in the future, just not playing soccer, not playing football. So now I spit the S word, but it's
welcome to America.
Yeah, I guess you guys Americanize me so much, but
I don't know, dude. I can't understand when someone else tells me that they think they know what's better for me, that person can go fuck themselves.
Here's the thing. Especially, I feel like, yes, they can go fuck themselves if they're anybody. But when it comes to parents, it's a different story.
That's interesting because I didn't grow up with the same pressure to follow rules as you guys because I never followed rules that I didn't respect. So if I don't understand why you don't want me out later than 6 p.m., I'm not going to do it. I'll stay out until I feel like it, and then I'll come home. If you tell me that 90% of crime happens between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m., I'll be home for those times because I don't want to get hurt. But bullshit rules, like you can't have your phone in your bedroom with you when you go to sleep, fuck you. Like that's my alarm in the morning, right? And if I want to stay up an extra 30 minutes, I'm going to because I can manage myself. So I never followed rules that I didn't respect. And I wasn't like a rebellious, reckless kid because I still followed the rules that made sense to me. And most times my parents had rules that made sense to me. But I mean, if anybody, including my parents, tried to tell me that they think they know better, I mean, even now my parents don't understand the business stuff. And I have so little respect for people who don't understand me. If you don't want what I want, then I don't care what you think. And that's interesting to me to hear, because I rowed all of my life. And then when I got the opportunity to row for Florida Tech, if my parents tried to tell me like, no, we think you're more of a UF guy and they've got a really shitty rowing team, we don't care if you row or not because UF's a better school, I would tell them to fuck themselves. Like that, I am struggling to understand why now you're okay because it was your dad's opinion and not yours.
Yes, it was because definitely my instinct answer would be I want to play soccer for the rest of my life.
Right.
That was my answer at 13 years old. But is this as important as when I am 21 years old, 22 years old, past 20? My understanding of the world would change. My understanding of the world at that time is very different from now. And that's why it takes time.
What's different?
What's different? Life, like everything is different.
Give me specifics. What's different specifically?
Let's say, for example, technology and the internet. Now you can reach out to anybody. When I was 13 years old, I was so limited to the environment I was in. It's like I only have my buddies who I play football with. I only know these guys who are not in my neighborhood or not in my circle, but we play football somewhere else. We play different tournaments. We do stuff. But then it's like my father is the one who pays for my education, like growing up. When I was in elementary, middle school, and high school. So when my father tells me something, he sees something that I don't see. This
because he pays for it?
Not because he pays for it, because he raised me.
Why do you think
since I was 0.1?
Why do you think he can see things that you can't see?
Because he is way more experienced. And we do have a saying in this to like back this up.
Right.
We have a saying back home, a person who's older than you by 1 day, he's more experienced than you by 1,000 days.
It depends on what area, because how old are you?
Yes,
how old are you?
But
how old are you?
It's more about respecting the older people and the experiences they went through, because I would compare it to something similar in China. They really respect the people who are seniors, the senior people. You know, I hear people here sometimes shit on older people. Oh, they're all blah, blah, blah. They can go do whatever. We don't care about them. But back home, we look at them as a valuable asset. They have seen so much that whatever their prediction of the future might be more accurate than 13 years old you. But when you come to a point that our age, you know, you're like 24, 25, at that time is like, I've been through so much. I've been through enough experience that I can predict the future. I know where businesses are going. I know what industries are going to expand in the future. And now I'm going to rely on my own experience, on my own journey. But anything before 18, we really give our parents the responsibility of making sure that we end up in a good place, that they want to see us there too. It's not just where I care about myself to be, it's about where do they see me fit into.
That's where we differ, because I don't care about where my parents see me fitting in. I'm going to fit in where I want to fit in. So a great example for why disrespecting old people isn't a problem in America where it is in China and other areas is because if you have two 65-year-old guys sitting in front of me, and one of them is a seasoned veteran in business, Warren Buffett, and the other one worked at 7-Eleven his entire life, right? I'm going to learn so much more from Warren Buffett than the guy who worked at 7-Eleven. The guy who worked at 7-Eleven, I probably can't learn that much from, right? But if I'm asking them for advice on how to become a manager at 7-Eleven, the 7-Eleven guy is going to be way better. So great example. How old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay, I'm 23 right now, so I'm younger than you. So by your perspective, you have more experience and should know more than me, right?
Yes.
But I can guarantee you right now that in any conversation about rowing, you're going to learn something from me, even though I'm younger and less experienced. So when you relay that to parents, it doesn't make any sense to me why their opinion is worth more, especially because your dad was never a pro soccer player.
Yes.
Was your dad ever a competitive soccer player? Did he like it growing up?
No, he
So
didn't.
why should you listen to anything he has to say about the topic of soccer? Because you're football, because you know so much more than him.
Yes. But because what he was thinking is that if one day I get injured, that would make me disabled to maybe walk properly. That would have a significant impact in my future. If you want to divert, you're on a route and you want to divert somewhere else. If you have like an injury, something related to sports that can significantly impact your skills, especially like the normal skills like walking, running, maybe like whatever, you name it.
So instead, you're going to be an airline pilot when you're traveling at 300 miles an hour in the air every day.
So
Plane crashes change lives.
yeah, and here's the thing, because maybe if I got injured by, let's say, 16 years old, okay, I came to 18, I got the scholarship, I came here. Then I do my medical check and maybe I still have a serious injury that I cannot be a pilot because of. And now it impacted my life after taking like multiple steps, after I left my family behind back home and went overseas and all. And now I'm getting disappointed. And now like, that's when you go through depression and start like the downfall rolling. I really think you mentioned like how old are you? I really think every person are the sum of the experiences they put themselves through.
I think experience is more important than age.
Yes. And I do think like when you say like you're more knowledgeable in rowing, I 100% agree. And I might be more knowledgeable in football, but this is what I put myself through. This is what you put yourself through. So now we can share experiences and kind of fill up the gaps. I have a gap in rowing. I don't know much about it. I ask you, you give me the knowledge. And now like I have a decent idea of what rowing, because I don't have to know everything about rowing. Right. You don't have to know everything about football, but that's what you like, that way you enjoy as a person and you do it. And this is really transformed because loving football from such young age and coming here to Florida Tech, becoming a pilot, it's completely different things, right?
Right.
And then every summer I would take classes. There is never a summer I haven't taken classes in college. And this was the previous summer was the last summer that I took only one class, and it was the Spain abroad class. And that was a beautiful class that we learned so much. It was definitely experiences over knowledge in a textbook. You know, It was never a textbook. It's more like you go workshop session, you sit there with experts. We had like people representative from the World Bank. We sat with Barcelona Football Club marketing team, and we talked about branding. We talked about marketing. It was like a lot about business, and it gives us the ideas that we need to like have these topics. Like, okay, now I understand what marketing is. If I want to get more information, I will ask somebody who's an expert in marketing.
You're right. You're supporting my point here, which is that experience speaks more than age. But I think that what it sounds like to me is your dad saw a lot of risk in soccer, right? And there's a quote that we like. I think it's a Hormozi quote, which is where poor people see risk, rich people see opportunity, which is, and risk is only mitigated by your information on the topic. And the reason that I'm harping on this is because you had more experience in soccer than your dad did. So where your dad sees risks, you might see that same situation and see opportunity, which makes you the better point of reference.
Well, maybe his dad had more experience in career.
Well,
not soccer career.
Career in general. And don't forget that I was 13 years old.
On contract to play soccer.
Yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I can only be good at soccer.
No, you could be good at other things.
Yes.
But if soccer is what you want to do and what you're most knowledgeable in, I think that should be up to you.
This is what I think like parents are really good at. Parents seeing your process from like being a baby or a toddler all the way to you being a teenager. When they see that process, they can identify the potential in you.
Maybe, but also maybe not. Because right now, I am exactly where my parents wanted me to be. And I'm incredibly unhappy. If I hadn't met Sander, I would be depressed right now considering killing myself because I'm stuck in a 9-to-5. But Sander, who's younger than me, has inspired me and gotten me on the... Huh?
I am younger than you. I didn't realize that. Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Sander has inspired me and worked with me to turn myself into something more. Sander, who's younger than me. Sander, who has the same, if not less, experience than me in whatever related industry. You have more experience in Kratom, I guess, for the baked good stuff. But like similar levels of everything, right?
We have different strengths in different areas, and I think that's why partially we work well together.
Right. One of my quotes at the end of the thing today is, if they don't have what you want, don't do what they did. So if you want the life that your dad lived, live what your dad did. But I don't want the life my parents had, so I'm going to do something different.
Yeah, I do believe that he was preparing me for something different. That's something I didn't experience enough growing up. And definitely, as you said, like you're 23 years old and you are where your family wants you to be, but this is not where you want to be at 23 years old.
Right.
And for me, like the thing with football is that I was 13 years old and I do see myself way more beneficial in different departments. Like in the aviation industry, I have great knowledge. I am a great asset to the aviation industry that if I go back home and I work the information that I have and network even more, I can open a business.
So you don't think you were experienced enough at 13 to make that decision?
Yes.
Interesting. I started rowing at 12 and I knew immediately that I would be doing it professionally.
Yes, I was able. As I told you, remember when we go back to like doctor, engineer, or disappointment?
Right.
It's like I knew if I go to medicine school, I'll do good. If I go to an engineering school, I'll be a really good engineer and I'll be a creative one too. Why not? Like I see myself as good adapting. Like I had the potential to be really good at football, but that doesn't necessarily mean I can only do football and football only. I can like find things that I can make it benefit me way differently than just sports, because sports, it's a good thing and a great thing too. But when you look at the world today, where is it going and all of that? Yes, but there are so many other industries that are opening up. Technology is like changing the way we live our lives, and even now, like we use Hoop, like it gives you stats of your performance and stuff like that. So you kind of can calculate your recovery, all of that, and you can apply it to lifestyle. You don't have to be a professional sports athlete to use these accessories, but you can use it to your lifestyle where you can improve yourself and make sure that you are going to end up in a place that you really believe that you'll have a significant impact and it will fulfill you as a person.
So fascinating conversation. I absolutely love this topic. I see value from both sides of it. I think the audience will too. And it's very nice to have a different perspective. That's why we wanted to bring a guest on and, have a different flavor to this podcast. I'd love to hear about your experience kind of getting back into the football scene when you met up with the Barcelona football team, and specifically we're talking with a lot of the marketing agency and marketing people there, right? So we can dive into a little bit of business in regards to football and kind of segue into that. What was your experience like there? How was it? And what did you learn?
Well, one of the highlights about this trip that I took my passion of football and I carried it to my personal growth. Now I want to learn about businesses. I do love football, so why not learn about businesses through football? It's like learning about businesses through aviation, stuff like that. And it was just fascinating to me that I was able to do such a thing. And when we went on the Spain trip, we went to Barcelona. We met with Barcelona Football Club marketing team, and you guys know that they changed the name of the stadium from the Camp Nou to Spotify Camp Nou. Mm-hmm. So Spotify been changing a lot, and I have not been paying attention enough to that aspect, but I downloaded Spotify a couple weeks ago when we were talking about it, and I saw that you guys have a video of the podcast on Spotify. I didn't know that feature exists. I didn't know you can upload videos on Spotify. Mm-hmm. And that was like a big, significant change and improvement within Spotify. So what Spotify is doing by having a sponsorship with Barcelona Football Club, they're trying to use their marketing techniques and use their influence, their partnership with artists, like, for example, Drake. And, you have the owl logo on the Barcelona jersey for one game. And that's because they have Spotify. So Spotify now is playing the role of an agency that connects a football club, like a football identity, with artists, because you can get the fan base of football fans with artists fans. And, Spotify can they have all the stats of how they get people's attention, how they can make something sell out way more. So by doing these partnerships with Barcelona, is that they can promote their artists and also promote the football into the culture of music. So what they're basically trying to do is combine sports and music. Because a lot of people, especially like when we talk from 10 to 25 years old, that's like when you're should be very athletic, very excited about sports, like to play some sports. So when you see your favorite artist sponsoring a specific football club, even though you don't care about football or you don't know about football, but I tell you, your favorite artist has a logo on this team's jersey, so you would try to buy it. And then when you go and try to buy it, they even make it more expensive because it's a limited edition. So when we were sitting with Barcelona team, they were telling us some of these jerseys, they sell it for 3,000 euros, believe it or not. And it goes sold out within hours, not even days. Mm-hmm. So the demand is there. And the collaborations, now Spotify is changing the game. It's not just about sport. Because my opinion before visiting Barcelona was, you're a football club. All you got to do is play football, win, get more trophies, become the best team, you know? Mm-hmm. But now it's more like, how do we engage with our fans? How do we promote music with football? How do we make it more exciting? They play songs before the game starts, you know, like 30 minutes before the game, you would hear like some artist playing in the city. And which artist? Specific artists that they have specific collaboration with Spotify. Therefore, Spotify promote them in the stadium of Barcelona. Mm-hmm. So it's like it all ties together. And like it was really fascinating for me to understand how they bring music and sports together and combine them. And this is, I believe, is probably the first collaboration in the football industry, but I do not believe it's going to be the last. Yeah. And this came from a problem that they had in Barcelona. Barcelona was they had a branding issue, basically. The brand was very associated to Messi. Do you know Lionel Messi? So the team Barcelona was super related to Lionel Messi. So when Messi left, the team kind of lost 70% of its brand identity. How do we get it back? They try to like reach out to new fans, different fans who know that Barcelona exists, but hate the fact that when they watch Barcelona, Messi is not there. So what they made is like, okay, let's get at least an artist. Because an artist can be on Barcelona jersey, tomorrow he can be on Real Madrid jersey, you know? He's an artist. He doesn't care. He needs his logo everywhere. He needs to sell out more. He needs to reach out to new audience. That's all they care about. And it's just, I think it's the first case, but it's going to change the game. And I won't be surprised if they start to imply that into basketball, NFL, baseball, whichever sports. I don't think it's the only sport. I just think it's a new experience that will change the marketing strategies forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see companies kind of branch out into other avenues of, you know, advertisement or kind of promotion, right? You know, you've seen this with Spotify, with the football stadium and their connection to the Barcelona soccer team. And you see this with Red Bull too, with Formula One, right? Like Red Bull, you know, we have one on the table, has as a company nothing to do with racing at all, right? It just is an initial groundwork. Like it's just an energy drink, right? But they use Formula One and they use a lot of different other sports to kind of market their product as like Red Bull does cool stuff. And I'm curious whether kind of Spotify comes at it from a similar angle to where, you know, they're like, well, we want to be part of this really amazing football team, so we're going to sponsor them. So when people see, you know, Barcelona play, they see Spotify play, right? And it doesn't even have to necessarily be connected to music. It can be, right? And you can intertwine the music and the sports, right? But it's also a really interesting promotional approach, because it's like you associate the cool thing that you're seeing from whatever is on the jersey or the logos are that are around the stadium, right? So it's like a subconscious, like, oh man, this is awesome, and so these things that I'm seeing here on the jersey or in the stadium must be also awesome, right? So I think that's a really cool way, you know, that I've seen companies start to branch out. And so what, you know, specifically you said that Barcelona, you know, is kind of the first football team to adopt, you know, a music platform as their sponsorships. Have you seen other football teams, you know, take unique sponsorships or bring on unique companies or kind of like divert from the norm in a similar way? Not really with Spotify, but maybe other unique advertisement or marketing strategies that you've seen or that you even explored within Barcelona, maybe within the Spotify sector?
Well, I think Real Madrid promote themselves as a brand itself. Like there is nobody who is Real Madrid. They are by far, like, I believe they're like the best team ever in football. And I was a Barcelona fan until I found out I'm a Messi fan, because when Messi left, I'm like, I don't care about Barcelona. Let them do whatever they want, you know. It doesn't bother me. I don't even watch their games as often. But now I look at Real Madrid, the way they signed Mbappe, now the way Real Madrid handles their own brand is by having an identity of victory. They are winners. If you want to be part of the royal team, Real Madrid, it means the royal team from Madrid. If you want to be part of that identity, you have to work hard towards it. You have to have the want of being part of that too. So Kylian Mbappe, there is a really young Brazilian player that also signed for Real Madrid this season. So they're signing the best players, and it's not costing them as much, because there is about 20 to 30% of the deal that the player want to be part of this team. But this is not like exactly the case of Barcelona. They took a different aspect or different angle to solve this. But I do think that the Barcelona, what they're doing is new, and we're going to see the results in the future. However, also Inter Miami, the team that Messi plays for right now, they're doing the same strategy. They posted Messi's playlist on Apple Music, and it's different. It's not Spotify, it's Apple Music.
Interesting.
So now you see like more music platforms will start reaching to different sports brands, trying to collab with them and try to like improve. If not, they promote themselves, their artists, and then the football club, and they try to benefit all. Because it's, in Barcelona's case, it was a win-win for Barcelona. They're going to rebrand their team. They're already like lost 70% of the brand identity by Messi leaving, so they want to build back. So a win that they're going to reach different audience by collaborating with different artists through Spotify. But now the game is going to be, okay, Spotify is doing this. That's Barcelona want to rebrand their brand, but what is Spotify doing? Why are they doing this? I believe that maybe we will see Spotify getting into live streaming in the future. Like if you want to watch this game for this team, have a Spotify premium membership or whatever, and then you're able to stream that too. Since now you can upload videos, next thing you know is streaming, and then we never know. Because with technology, with AI, with all of these things, it's like we're going somewhere that we don't really exactly know how exactly it's going to look like, but all we know is that it's going to improve things and it's going to take it a step further.
I want to tie in to, you used a few words to describe Real Madrid that I really liked. You used win and achieve, and also implied the word legacy, right? And those are all kind of winner words, right? And for the past 2 weeks on the podcast, we've talked about kind of like softer words versus more competent focused words, right? Like, you know, warmth and competence. Thank you. Depending on how you phrase what you're talking about, you can balance your sentences or balance your speeches from warmth to competence. And so I think it's interesting to see, like, from even someone who's not on the team, you recognize Madrid as like this winner achieving team, this team with a legacy that you can be a part of, right? And those are all very competent words that I think tie into that team specific brand, right? And so I think that's a cool thing to note, you know. And then,
you know what's crazy?
Yeah.
Because when you look at Real Madrid, sometimes they're down 2-0, and it's like 85 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes before the game ends, and you're like, don't worry, Real Madrid will make it back. It's crazy because they got to that point actually. They actually,
by using that like confidence stream that they are, you know, riding down.
I like to call it the charisma, the winner charisma.
Yes. It's funny you say that, because that's actually on the podcast we listened to together. One of the words that her name is
Vanessa Van Edwards.
Vanessa Van Edwards talks about is, you know, having that charisma, and how do you manage it, and how do you create it and balance it, and it's through the balance of warmth and competence.
Yeah,
right.
It's interesting in sports because I think that the success rate of a team is what defines it, like at its core. And I watch a lot of Formula One. You notice with Red Bull, like you mentioned earlier, they sell an experience, right? So they do all these other advertising things because drinking Red Bull is an experience, not a drink. A great comparison is that Duracell sponsors Williams, like the batteries, right? Duracell batteries does not sell an experience. They sell batteries, right? So it's not as effective. Similarly, Coca-Cola sells an experience. If you watch all of their advertisements, it's not about anything in particular. It's just people who are drinking Coca-Cola are happy. It sells warmth and family. That's what the Coca-Cola brand is. And that's why it's been so strong for so long. McDonald's does the same thing. But it's interesting specifically with sports because if you were a diehard fan of a sport, it's one of two reasons. Number one, you're from there. Because you'll notice Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everybody in Tampa is a Bucs fan because that's where they grew up. They can associate and identify with it, right? Yes. Or they have your favorite drivers or have had your favorite athletes. Yeah, right. I'm thinking Formula One. Yeah.
I got you.
So Ferrari is a great example because even if you're not a Ferrari fan, everyone's a Ferrari fan, right? And part of that is because of the success that they've had. Dude, they haven't won a championship since 2007, right? Drivers or constructors, right? But everybody's still a fucking Ferrari fan because it's Ferrari. They have such a legacy of winning. So to sponsor a team like that, you automatically get a diehard fan base, and then everybody else who, even if they're not fans, they can recognize the success of that brand. So I think it's important, especially for Real Madrid, with signing Messi, that they use him not as an opportunity to make their team more successful within the game of soccer, but also to leverage an identity that's bigger than just Messi. Because the problem with Barcelona, like you were saying, is as soon as Messi left, everyone jumped ship with him, right? Yeah. Because it's about him, not the team, right? Well, Schumacher drove for Ferrari, broke records, and then he went and drove for Mercedes afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. Ferrari fans didn't get up and put their Mercedes hats on. They were still Ferrari fans because the team's bigger than the player. Yeah. So I think that part of the Spotify deal is trying to make the team bigger than the player.
I agree with everything you said. Just one thing you said, Real Madrid signed Messi. That didn't happen.
I have no idea. I don't watch soccer.
That's fine.
I thought you said they did.
In Miami.
Inter Miami.
Oh, Miami. Got it.
Miami signed Messi, and Real Madrid signed Kylian Mbappe, who's like the French player. He's like now the most potential, the most valuable.
Yeah, got it.
Like, he left Real Madrid to go Inter Miami.
Okay. No, yeah, Messi. Barcelona to Inter Miami.
Oh, okay. I fucked it up too.
I don't want to focus on this tiny detail.
Yeah.
These are major details in the soccer world. I'm just negligent, but all the soccer fans on this podcast right now are screaming. I'm sorry to both of you.
That's why I say the S word. That's the reason behind it.
Anyways, my point being, making the team larger than the player, than the talent is important.
Yes, and I do believe that's why Barcelona now started to do this experiment with Spotify. However, Real Madrid is remaining the same. They didn't have to change their marketing strategies. They didn't have to do anything. They're just strengthening what they're doing. And I think what they're doing is very sustainable. Mm-hmm. I think if you protect the identity of the club and make sure that it only grow and you accomplish more titles, you win more games, I think that's how you become a better football club. However, there is one point that frustrates me a little bit because this is what Barcelona is trying to do with Spotify, and they're also using TikTok. Like they have their players sometimes dance, do stuff. Like, you're a football player, just play football.
Right.
Like, why are you dancing to the camera to reach the new audience? Like, that's ridiculous to me a little bit.
It's an interesting point you raise. I think that we're entering kind of a new era of companies, and you see Barcelona morphing, you see Red Bull changing, you see Duracell changing and how they're marketing and approaching the audience around them. You see TikTok videos, right? And I think one of the biggest elephants in the room is AI entering our lives, right? Like that's the big thing that's front and center, that people are like, oh my God, how is this thing going to change our future? How is its growth going to play a role in what we can do or what we don't need to do in, our future lives and as we grow, right? And so we've seen ChatGPT 3.5 came out, which rocked the world, and then 4 came out, and then 4.0 came out, right? And these are all, large language models that progressively got better and better, got more accurate. We're able, as they iterated, we're able to surf the web, generate images. I remember when we first started using ChatGPT, we tried to generate like logos with like the name of what we wanted on the picture, and it was terrible with letters and names. You'd have to like specifically request it several times to not put any letters, numbers, or names inside of the logo it generated because it always screwed it up.
Right.
It's interesting because we use ChatGPT to generate the background images of our Instagram and Facebook and Twitter posts, right? And it's funny because if you look back at the old ones, like when you have like business product game or something on the old ads, it's misspelled in like a couple of the corners and I just couldn't get it right. And I was like, it's good enough. It's fine. It's faded anyway, whatever. Right. But on the new ones, it's actually spelled correctly and it looks good. And so you can see this iteration, you know, and it's happening very quickly. Right. And so how do you think, you know, with all of this technology and how it's influencing, you know, social media and marketing and these companies, how do you think it's changing our lifestyle and our workplace environment and, you know, maybe even time management skills or our ability to be productive? How do you think it's negatively or positively impacting those aspects of our lives?
Well, I think one of the first things that will happen is that people will have no excuse to be unaware or uninformed of something. Now, if you want to learn anything, if you want to, any skill that you have, any piece of information you want to learn, AI is making things more accessible and easier to deliver. So they can even now, like we see tools that you can throw a whole chapter from a book and it will give it to you in like a
summary.
Yeah, a summary, or it will give you like the cards, the flips, and you can kind of memorize stuff. It gives you like the things you need to know out of the whole, I don't know, you want to call it 1,000 words. It will give you like 200 words that kind of gives you everything you need to know. Right. And I think these are going to be very useful tools that a lot of people are going to take advantage of. Well, I'll tell you something. I think older people are not going to benefit as much from AI as younger people, because the younger people, they have more technology skills to learn about these tools and apply it in their lives. Where like the older people, somebody cannot run a computer very well. How are they expected to learn things from AI? So it will become very challenging for them, but it will be easier for the younger generation to use these tools and learn as much as they can, improve their business, find different marketing strategies, save time. Time is one of the biggest things that will change. And I think the most expensive thing we're looking at in the next 10 years is going to be time.
You said that you think older people will benefit less from AI, right? And because the younger generation kind of has a better grasp on technology, you know, iPad kids, you know, essentially, right?
Specialists,
iPad specialists. Yes.
Anger issues.
Yeah. If you were to start let's say you're in school right now, right? And you're like, hey, Dad, I am planning on using this AI tool to help me study more effectively for this test. And he came back to you with, well, I think studying on pen and paper is really valuable. You know, you can learn a lot from pen and paper. And then you were like, well, this new AI tool, it helps me save time. It's, you know, it's more productive. It's awesome. It's correct. And it gives me all these like awesome details and like different avenues that I can study, right? How would you kind of navigate, you know, because obviously your dad is older than you, right? So like you have this idea that younger people are more apt to understand AI, but you also have this instilled value of the father figure in my life or the older folk in my life have an inherently, you know, better understanding of life in a big picture, right? So how would you balance that kind of conversation? And when do you, I'm kind of trying to tie in the family dynamic to this AI conversation. How do you find the balance between listening to the people around you who are older about this sort of thing and also kind of seeing your own path with these things that you might be just more familiar with now that, you know, of course you're also 24, so you're older?
Well, I really think that when you learn something, when you learn X amount of information, you also know that you're uninformed of much bigger information that you're not aware of. So the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know everything.
Yeah, the more you know, the more you know that you don't.
Yes.
All right. That's a confusing way to put it.
Yeah.
I hope none of our listeners are stoned right now.
They'll be rewinding that for days. Yeah.
Well, I really think that is really accurate, and I think the older people have a lot of experiences, but you can be unique when you want to deliver an idea. For example, like accounting. Now, a lot of accounting work or like doing the accounting on Excel. Now there are AI tools that can basically work as an accountant for you. You don't need an accountant. So when I bring a whole case like that and have AI analyze all of that and give me the stats, and then, for example, show somebody who's older, who grew up on pencil and paper and do things like manually. When you show them these things, they're gonna be like, okay, now I can save $1,500 a week, for example, for an accountant, and now I don't have to use that. Now their understanding starts to shift, and the more they learn, the more they know they don't know everything.
Yeah, I think you touched on an interesting point where there's a balance of learning between you can learn a lot from people that are older than you, but older people can learn a lot from people who are younger as well, right? So I think there's this kind of give and take, at least in my opinion. Mason, how do you feel that AI is changing the way we interact with people, changing our productivity, and revolutionizing how we go about, let's say building businesses or even just day-to-day activities? Or how do you see it kind of panning out in the future for certain jobs and industries?
I think at the core, AI is probably the end of our world. I think it's actually going to end up in like world detonation. I think we're fucked.
It's a very pessimistic.
It is. But AI is, I think, probably the largest piece of technological development by a private company, not the government. So when it comes to weaponry specifically, but even take lasers, take Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, right? Military had that before the public. Everything that the Formula One racing teams eventually trickle down into your daily cars, right? Everything from the government eventually trickles down into something that we can use. And in going through the government first, you're filtering out the things that don't work. And then the things that do work end up being released to the public in different aspects and attributes that the public can use. By the public developing it first, we're all guinea pigs to this. And if someone gets it wrong, everybody's fucked. So that's the first thing that I have to say. I also think it's interesting that memory retention and processing are inversely correlated, and that's being shown through AI. So memory retention, I'll define as the ability to learn information and then recall it at a later point. And processing is understanding new information. So picture this. Your parents are in the 50s. They grew up with textbooks, no computers. When they read something, they have to remember it because you can't just flip to that same page of the textbook in the middle of a job interview, right? So you have to remember that information, right? Now, that might take longer for them to understand because they're reading it from a 3-paragraph section in the textbook. Nowadays, Gen Alpha has AI. They can pull up information on the spot whenever they need it and get it in an easily digestible format. So they can process the information very quickly, but studies have shown that their information retention has decreased, which is interesting when you bring in the point of older, more experienced people, because if you and I are sitting across from each other and I'm an older person who's more experienced, I can recall information that I have from my years of experience, and you have to look it up right now. You might end up with a better answer than me, but I can get there faster still because I've lived the experience. It's really interesting. And ultimately, I think what that means is the people who are going to use technology to do something are going to have an easier time. And the people who are not going to use technology to get any better are just going to get even worse. So like before computers, everyone was on a level playing field. If you wanted to get into business, you had to go out, shake hands and kiss babies, right? Now with Google, there are people who it's never been easier to start a business and it's never been easier to not start a business, right? It's just going to get even worse. The people who are motivated to start a business are going to make crushing businesses that excel. And the people who don't want to make businesses are going to use AI to make porn of their cats.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. I think that, at least in my opinion, AI has the potential to be an awesome tool, or it has the potential to really destroy a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you mentioned some other dangers earlier on in this kind of AI discussion, talking about, or at least potential dangers in my eyes, because you talked about how answers are like quick and fast, and it can, surf the internet and get you all this information super quickly. Right now, there's some risk involved of like, depending on what AI you use, it might give you different answers for the same question. And there's the potential for like future manipulation with different, third-party companies and stuff like that. And based on that kind of danger, do you think there is a way to protect yourself from, these, negative kind of AI programs that are out to manipulate the populace or kind of give you false information? Do you think there's a way to protect yourself, or to maybe even develop a system to protect society as a whole from this sort of danger?
Well, I think AI as a topic itself, it needs a regulator. It needs a whole department where like there are regulations for AI. The way it develops, what information does it provide? What is the database that it's pulling information from, And like I remember one of the things that we're talking about is that when you ask, does Israel have the right to protect itself? And you ask that to ChatGPT, tells you, yes, Israel is its own country and it has all the rights to protect itself and protect its people and all of that. And then you ask ChatGPT the same question, you change Israel by Palestine. And it tells you it's a really complex topic that we don't have enough information to tell. Like, it's really complex. So even the answers by changing one word within the same input on ChatGPT gives you different results. And I think it all comes down to the database. I think people really need to see a regulation department with wherever it comes from. But these things, especially if we want to carry it to the future, it has to be regulated. Because anything that is not regulated, it will be free for all.
Yeah, I think it could be as simple as putting, how if you use a photo or a video in a YouTube video that belongs to someone else, you have to cite them. Mm-hmm. I think that if every piece of AI created content has a watermark on it that says this is AI, that can do a lot.
Yes.
Because this, like, a lot of things still don't pass the sniff test. Like those Joe Rogan interviews with like they're faked. Like he did an interview with Steve Jobs or something. When you watch those right now, for the first 5 seconds, you're like, dude, Steve, what's happening? Steve Jobs? And then you realize it's not real because of the cadence of their voice, or like their ear like folds into their head or something. There's tiny things that you can detect. But the average reading level of an American in the United States is that of a 12-year-old. So there are people out there watching these.
Quite literally, not even an exaggeration.
No, that's a genuine statistic. Yes. Yeah. Not even provided by AI. That's a genuine statistic. But there are people out there who will be fooled by the videos currently, and they're only getting better. Like you said with ChatGPT 3 compared to 4.0, in the last year, it's made crazy jumps. So next year, like, no one's going to be able to tell the difference between real and fake. And I think that having a watermark on there that defines every AI content as AI leaves it up to the interpreter to decide whether or not they want to believe it or not.
Well, yeah. And also if there is a label that tells you this video used some AI generator, and would that be a good thing or a bad thing? Because sometimes it could be actually good because it saved so much time for the person who is preparing that video and use AI tools to import, for example, definitions, to import any content, and that might be used in the good side or the bad side, where like it's fake, you're deep faking somebody saying something and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think now, like today, we're living in the life of we're seeing those things. And the effects of it too. It's like, especially when it gets involved with politics, with culture, with society, and what is actually good for the people, the deep fakes, what is the purpose of it, the good use of AI. Why is that? We would say, for example, saving time. I would say that's a great thing. You don't have to waste all your time looking through books in a library. You can just ask a question, get an answer. Right. So I don't like, it's not really specified and it's not regulated. That's why it's like really complex topic to comment on, but a regulation must be in place, in my opinion.
I think what's kind of interesting too is that AI, I see as a tool that may create weak men. In our analogy from earlier, we talked about strong men and weak men in hard times and in good times, right?
Right.
And I think that AI, because it makes things so accessible and so easy, has the potential to make a lot of weak men in easy times and good times, right? And that in turn will generate strong, because it would generate eventually bad times, which will then generate strong men, right? And strong men at the end of the day have to be good leaders, right? They have to be people who are charismatic, who can, take a bull by its horns metaphorically and kind of, ride through life and really make a strong, positive impact on the people around them. And,
we are leaders in a sense, right? We're leaders maybe in our family or in our general community or within our own business or our passions like aviation or business or racing or whatever, right? And what are some core qualities that you think leaders like you and I and all of us here together, or maybe other leaders that you look up to, maybe Alex Hermosi or Chris Williamson or whatever, what qualities do you think define them, and what qualities do you think that you are going to see percolate through society as these good times create, these good times create weak men, which then creates hard times, which then creates strong men, right? What do you think is going to come up from the ground and really percolate through these good leaders?
Well, I think one of the main skills as a leader that they should need first is identifying stuff. You want to be a great identifier as a leader, because if you see something not going in order, you want to know how to fix that. How to first identify it before you think about the next step, which is like problem solving. That's one of the leadership skills, that when you see a problem and you identify, you want to come up with different solutions that may work and then pick the best solution out of them. And every solution might have like a period of time that it will work for. But after, for example, 5 years, that solution is not going to work anymore, and we need a different solution for that. And maybe that 5 years give you time for other tools such as AI and stuff like that, where it comes place and helps you too. So I think a leader, it's something, you are a leader, but how are you doing? How are you implying it into real life, identifying, problem solving? And then from there, you can lead by the influence. You can influence other people to do stuff, because as a leader, you don't want to be the one in the car when people are pushing the car. You want to be pushing the car with the people pushing the car. That's what the real leader is. And with all of these stuff is that the leader have to not see himself, oh, I'm the leader, I don't care about, I'm in a higher position, I get paid more, stuff like that. No, a leader is very humble. You try to be part of the team, make sure your team becomes the most powerful version of this team, and then carry that to maintain that level.
It's interesting you bring up the analogy of the leader isn't the one in the car, he's with the people pushing the car, right? And Elon Musk actually brought this up in an interview that I watched recently, and he said that in his, in SpaceX, for example, or in Tesla, he will work each job for at least a few days or a little bit of time to kind of establish the fact that if he's asking you to do it, he's also willing to do it, right? And so, I think that can set a really powerful example for whoever you're trying to lead or a group that you're trying to be a part of, right? And, I love that point. I love that point. And I wanted to ask you kind of what are some core beliefs that you carry with you as a leader, or what are you aspiring to be when you are leading?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I've got a lot written down. I'm not going to run through all of it because it's a lot, but I have thought a lot about this because I want to start by saying the leadership positions that I have held, because I don't believe that I'm holding any right now. And so I don't want to have the title of a leader right now because I'm not in an established position, but here are the positions that I have held. I was a team captain for Space Coast Crew, my high school rowing team. I coached for Space Coast Crew, my high school rowing team. I was a team captain of the Florida Tech men's varsity rowing team. I was the club president of the Florida Tech men's rowing team after we were cut. I was then the keynote speaker for our lawsuit. I was the varsity club sports and intramurals liaison for the Student Government Association of Florida Tech. And I was a vice president and project manager for the Formula SAE team at Florida Tech as well. But I don't like the title of leader right now because I don't feel that I'm in a leadership position. And I feel that the number one most important quality that a leader can have is this. A great man does not seek to lead, he is called to it. For every single one of the positions that I've held, I never ran for one of these positions or competed for it or debated anybody. I was asked to do all of them. And I think that's what made me a good leader when I was in those positions. But I don't think I'm in one of those positions right now. And therefore I don't want the label. But I think that apart from just not seeking to lead, not seeking that power, I think that a good leader should be composed. They don't lose themselves. They don't get emotional needlessly. They don't yell and scream and shit. I think they should have a strong moral compass. Not necessarily a good moral compass, but just a strong one that they're certain in what they want, even if what they want isn't the best. So I think that, for example, in wartime, in the Vietnam War. A lot of people, even in the military, didn't think that they should be there. And they had to do a lot of things that might not be morally correct. But to be a good leader in that scenario, you need to be certain in what needs to be done. I think also you should be efficient in interpersonal skills, in that you should know your team and know what positions each team member would be best suited in. So you need to efficiently identify by personal skills, soft skills, not just hard skills, who fits best where. We learned a lot of that from our time in SAE. I think they need to be proficient in their area of leadership. I don't want to be led by someone who doesn't know what they're doing, right? Like I would want someone to be a leader, maybe not knows more than me, but is comfortable with the topic. Yeah. And then finally, I think they need to be selectively emotional. I think that a leadership that is too open to their people can be seen as weakness, and someone that's too closed off can be seen as someone that they can't connect to. I think that there are specific moments that a leader needs to sit down and be emotionally vulnerable with their team, but it shouldn't be all the time, because that's too much warmth and not enough competence. Those are the 5 I have.
Very cool. Do you feel as though you aren't a leader right now because you haven't been called to a leadership position?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And, but don't you think you are, in a way, an example of someone who has leadership qualities? Like, I think that, I've seen people at, Pauhana or Kraken, look up to you or the both of us working together on our laptops and, ask questions. And like, it doesn't necessarily feel like a leadership position when we're there working on our laptops, but it's setting an example that I think is beneficiary, right? And so do you think that you can still be a leader even if you aren't called into a position? Like, you can still set a good example that is a leadership like, right?
I think I can. I think it's just not something that I look to do. And I think that goes back to being called to it and not wanting to do it, right? So when I conduct myself, I try and conduct myself to be the person who I want to be. And if that's perceived as a leader or a role model or a good example, I'm happy, because that is a positive influence on those people who see me that way. But it's not something that I'm looking for. I don't want that recognition. I don't want that accolade. I want to just be myself and who I am. And my perfect self is somebody who relays those traits, but I think I'm in constant progress working towards that self and not there quite yet. So if people perceive me that way now, awesome, I'm happy. But I feel like I'm in constant pursuit of that. And I would want to be called a leader, not call myself a leader.
I think that's one of the few things that I've heard you touch on, that your definition of the thing comes from external influence, right? Like a very common trait that I've seen with your character and how you carry yourself is, I define who I am and I define what I will be, right? And this is one of the, and that's why I'm interested in it. It's one of the few things that it comes from an outside perspective to really define it wholly, right? Do you feel the same way? Do you feel differently? Do you feel like you can be a leader for yourself even if you aren't in a leadership position, or do you think it comes from something external?
Well, actually, yeah, I think you said it very well. I think when you look at leadership, it's not just about a position. It's not you're in a leadership position, that means you have to be a leader. You have to be a leader within yourself in order to become a public leader. Because a great example would be is discipline. If you can discipline yourself to do things that you don't feel like doing, but doing regardless of that, then you're leading yourself to become the person that you truly want to become. And by doing this, now you have leadership skills that you can imply. Maybe you have soft leadership skills, which makes you decent in leadership, but if you have the soft skills and the hard skills too, then you can combine them together and get out in public, and you can yell out loud. You can give like a tour to X amount of people. You don't care. Like all of these discomforts, these are all small, tiny skills that I think it builds up and it adds to the leader you become. So the more disciplined you are, I would say, the more leadership skills you have, therefore you will become a better leader.
So you think that discipline has a direct correlation to who you become as a leader?
If it was implied towards the direction of leadership, yes.
Gotcha. Do you think that your family structure and the way you were raised with your dad in particular instilled those kinds of values for you to become a leader, or do you think you found it elsewhere? Or to become a future leader, to become someone who is important in the community, right?
Well, yeah, and then you want to be somebody important. You don't want to be a nobody. You don't want to die and nobody knows about your name. You know, you want to have a legacy. You want to leave a big legacy behind you. If it's through your work that you have accomplished in life, through your kids that hold your name and your last name, through your research and stuff and studies, let's say, for example, or the products you make to improve the world and make it a better place. So that all takes a lot of initiative and a lot of discipline through the process. When you mentioned the family, yes, definitely my family, the foundation of the family that I came from really imply the discipline of doing stuff. So I always look at my oldest brother and be like, how did he end up being this person? I look to my older brother, how did he end up that person? I look at myself. If I'm procrastinating, then I'm like, where do I want to end up? And how do I want to benefit my younger brothers to look up for me and learn from me in order to imply it in themselves? So in my opinion, it all comes through discipline. And I think working at such young age really taught me that nothing is easy in this life. You have to work your way through everything in order to gain it. Like as the saying says, no pain, no gain. You have to go through pain, go through discipline, challenge yourself, improve your set of skills in order to become a better leader. I don't think it's a position. It's like a title. Oh, he's a leader. Yes, but what makes him a leader? What experiences did he go through? How many times did he step outside of his comfort zone to grow these skills in order to become this better of a leader? Right. And I think it all falls down after you challenge yourself, put yourself through uncomfortable situations, and you learn through it. Then you become a better person, therefore a better leader.
It's interesting that you bring up legacy, because that's a common goal for many people, especially young men, is having a legacy. And I'm very conscious and very aware that that's not a current goal of mine, but I'm anticipating it'll become one in my 40s.
It's interesting because Alex Hormozi talks about legacy, and like his perspective is like, there will be one point in time in the future where you will be dead, and then after that point, no one will remember you and no one will know what you did, right? For the most, by and large part, like 500 years from now, right? Besides like a very, very select few people. So, I don't think that if I died tomorrow, I'd leave any sort of legacy to be remembered beyond a week, right? Yeah. But I hope that one day I will be able to have a great enough impact onto the people around me in society in order to leave something that, my thumbprint has been on, at least from a past life.
I think everybody fades into insignificance eventually. Even like, imagine Elon Musk invents space travel and like warp speed and shit, right? So now we have the ability to travel interstellar. Right. And everyone will remember Elon Musk forever because humanity was once trapped on Earth and now we can travel amongst the stars, right? In 500, 1,000, in 2,000 years, in 2 billion years, no one's going to know who the fuck Elon Musk was. Right. No one's going to know about Earth because you were just born.
No one knew Caveman Joey who invented the wheel.
Exactly.
Someone invented it.
Exactly. Right. At some point, the Library of Alexandria will be burned down and no one will remember. And my current thoughts on leaving a legacy are exactly that. It's, I'll fade into non-existence eventually anyways, so who cares what I do now? I just want to do what makes me happy and completes my goals. Yeah. But I also recognize that as men mature, and especially as men start to consider parenthood, when you have enough skills and experience to impart on a younger generation, I think that men start to feel the urge not to produce, but to pass on. So there are a lot of older guys who I work with who they're not there right now because they're riding out retirement. They're past retirement. They're at the point now where they're like, I'm not trying to learn new skills. I'm trying to hand off the skills that I have, which is an interesting perspective that I can't understand as such a young person, but I'm anticipating that's a goal that is likely going to develop in me in my later years.
Yeah.
I do think that legacy has a direct correlation of what do you do and the things. For example, you can say you can die as a name or you can die as a number. And the difference is that when you die as a name, people would say X person died. Mm-hmm. But as a number, you would say 10 people died in space, like a rocket launch failure, 10 people died.
Right.
That's a number. But if you say, if one of them was Elon Musk, there'd be Elon Musk died and 9 others in a rocket launch failure.
Right.
And I think that's the difference where like do you really want to die as a name or as a number? Do you want your legacy to be correlated to you as a person, or do you just want to be like any other buddy, you know? Like,
personally, I don't care. I don't mind if I die a number because I don't care how I'm perceived by other people. But there's an interesting.
But you do want to be perceived as a leader, though, right?
No, I don't mind if I'm perceived as a leader or not. If I'm in a leader, if I am placed in a leadership position, a goal of mine is to do as best I can to be a good leader. But I don't see myself as a leader currently.
How do you see yourself living out a legacy after your death without, you know, other people perceiving you as a leader?
I don't want a legacy right now. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so I think this is your mentality right now at this point in time.
I think at some point, as most men do, I will want a legacy, but that's not something that I want right now. I'm not seeking a legacy. I'm not seeking titles. I'm not seeking leadership. My goal is to never seek leadership, but to be capable of it if I'm asked to. And legacy will come when it comes. There's a quote which is, I used to really like it in high school when I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be an actor in high school. And it was, I want to be so important that if I'm killed, people won't call it a murder, but they'll call it an assassination, which I used to think was really cool. But as I aged, I was like, that's pretty vain of me, because at that point, I'm defining who I am based off of others' personality or others' perception of me. And I want to define who I am based on my perception of me.
But I think it comes down to the value, though. It comes down to, like, what's your value to society? That's why when it's going to be called, it's a murder or an assassination.
Right.
I think, like, the value install and you leave within the community or society, that's how they're going to perceive you. And maybe you don't care about the way they perceive you, but what you care is improving society, improving the community. And just you, by doing that, they change their perception of you automatically. And then at that point, you're going to start like caring a lot about legacy. And you're going to be like, okay, now I can have legacy through a product, through work, or through my sons, like through your producing children, your continuing of the existence of humanity.
Right.
So there are different ways to like put in legacy, but and legacy, some people look at legacy as money. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's just different forms of legacy. And what do you actually value the most? Because I'll tell you something, money is something that comes and go, but then your children are your children and only you. They're not anybody's children, you know? And that's why you're going to look at it as something that can never be changed, that can never be manipulated, because the source of that child comes from that person. He's the father of those children. So I think it really comes down then to social values, and that correlates with legacy, as we were saying before.
Yeah. I haven't thought a lot about children just because I'm not at a point where I can afford it or dedicate the time. I don't think I have enough information to pass on to a kid yet, honestly.
I believe you're going to want a lot.
I eventually I might want some, but I can't say for certainty right now. But I think specifically when comparing bettering a community, but by bettering a community, what comes along with it is the name recognition and not being a number anymore. And I think that a lot of people our age are really focused on getting the name and not really focused on bettering the community. We know some of them. And I think that it's so important for me to become the person who I want to focus on bettering the community and then accept whatever name comes with it.
I think it's more about consequences that comes back and find you. The more you put effort into improving the community,
right,
your dedication, your effort will come back to you as a legacy. They're going to be, okay, now he has a name. Now he is this person that we actually value.
Right.
Because all of the things that he have done to the community. But as you said, I 100% agree with you. Nobody should look forward to make a name for themselves. You shouldn't put that much effort towards it. It should come to you by itself.
It's kind of like
through your work, through your dedication.
Right. It's kind of like it's paradoxical to give money to charity and then advertise it. Because by advertising it, that's not very charitable, right? It kind of tarnishes it. So it's like, I don't want to better the community because I want to be known worldwide and remembered forever. If it's a byproduct, okay, but that's not my goal, right? So if I donate to charity, my goal is to help these people. And if people find out about it and think better or worse of me for it, fine, so be it. My goal is to help these people. And I think that having that goal at heart is what's most important. And it's difficult to judge with people sometimes the trueness of their character based on the actions that they take, because you don't know if it's premeditated. You don't know if they're valuing the actions they're taking or the name and recognition that comes with it.
Yeah.
Do you believe that action speaks louder than words?
For sure. Yep. Absolutely. But, you know, like I say, if I donate to charity and then I hire a team, a camera crew to come and watch me do it, right? And then on there, I'm like, I'm such a nice guy. I want to help these people. They're going to have lots of things. Like, that's not charitable. That's not humble. And it negates the act of charity. I'm on a tangent. What's your next point?
So we touched on a few good leadership qualities, what you need to do to be a good influence on your community and to the people around you. I wanted to ask you, what are some things that you should avoid if you're trying to be a good leader or to be a good influence on your community or in your workplace or, you know, in a club or whatever? What are some things you can avoid?
I've noticed a lot of specifics from work. And one of the reasons that I really want to steer myself away from the title of leader is because in the W-2 work environment, when you're promoted, you're being handed a leadership position. You're not asked to do it most times. It's just the way that promotions work. And the people that you work with oftentimes might not see you as a leader, but they can't say no because that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You don't have the authority to say no. You are just forced in that situation. And as a result, you see a lot of people who might not be deserving of a leadership position having to take it. And I see a lot of that. So my boss at work struggles to delegate. We have a team of like 15 and he does the work of 5. He does so much work. There are people who are underworked on my team. I'm doing part-time work for another team because I'm so underdelegated. And it stresses him out. And I think that as a leader, you need to be able to understand that you can't do everything. That's the point of having a team. So you need to delegate. My other boss, the one who I'm doing part-time work for, cares too much about the opinions of others. So he falls victim to office politics a lot. And he's really concerned about what other people think of him because he knows that's how you get a promotion, which is another core fundamental flaw of the W-2 working system. A boss of a friend of mine isn't humble. He's braggadocious, and he doesn't have the respect of his teammates for that. Higher management is too disconnected. I've never seen the CEO of my company once. I've never seen the section leader. I've never met the VP. They don't come around. I feel like no matter how big the company is, the leader should be like Elon Musk. You should do the job for a couple of days, right? At the very least, walk around the building and introduce yourself to the low-level workers. Inspire them. Recognize that they're not just a number. And then finally, this is a little bit more of a W-2 working flaw, but its effort is not correlated with income. So the input doesn't equal the output. I can work really hard and I'm never recognized for it. I don't get an attaboy. I don't get a pat on the back. I don't get recognition. I don't get a pay increase. I don't get anything. So I have no incentive to work hard. And that might be seen as a system flaw, but I think that if you're a leader of that system, you need to do something, implement something to recognize people for good work. And that comes on every level of leadership, and I don't see it at all.
I hear you. Great points. I think tying it into the 9 to 5 is valuable because that's something that not only we experience every day, but the audience experiences every day too. So kind of, allowing them to take note of the actions or inaction of people around them and to kind of grow off of that and, understand how to become a better leader from that. Mm-hmm. Now, we touched on good things. We touched on bad things. What are like the top 3 heavy hitters for things you need to do to be a leader?
You start. You start.
I start?
What are your top 3 things?
Oh, okay.
And then we'll do Omar and then we'll go around.
My top 3 things.
You always ask me and then I always answer and then I don't ask you back. You just go ahead and answer. So we'll start with you this time.
I think, I really love Vanessa Van Edwards' point of warmth versus competence. I think, the first thing that comes to mind for me when, trying to be leader-like is to balance warmth and competence so that you can meet in the middle at charisma. It's important to be able to understand people's issues, but it's important to be able to understand when those issues need to be delegated as well, or when you need to solve the bigger problems at hand rather than deal with these small things. And it's vital that everyone feels heard, whether that's directly from you or from the people that you've implemented into the positions, under your umbrella, right? But that charisma and that humbleness but competence, I think, is a vital characteristic of someone who's a good leader. I think that additionally, you have to be strong in the way you carry yourself, right? With your voice, with how you present yourself, with how you speak to the other people around you. It's not necessarily, I don't think it comes from a point of ego. Like, you don't talk like you're better than everyone else, but if you're able to talk like you are important and your opinion is valuable and you want people to see that value, if you talk in that manner, I think that's really essential to be a good leader. And then lastly, I think that working really hard and showing that work ethic to the people around you, and showing that you're dedicated, and showing that you care, and showing that you're willing to go the extra mile no matter what it takes because you believe in the dream that everyone is forming together, I think that's essential. And those would be my top 3 that come to mind when I'm thinking about someone who, you know, is leader like that I would look up to, right? That's what I aspire to be, because that's someone that I painted a picture of that I would want.
Who are some of your leaders?
Ayrton Senna,
okay,
you know, is the first one that comes to mind. I love the guy. Absolutely amazing race car driver. And he balanced the competence of his racing and knowing that he was, you know, one of the best with also giving back to his community and giving back to his hometown and connecting with his fans and the team and building something greater, right? Another leader for me, honestly, is Alex Hormozi. Like, he is someone who I absolutely adore listening to, because he carries himself in such a great manner, and he's so honest and upfront, and he's able to direct people in a way that, you know, he doesn't put himself on a pedestal, but he carries himself in such a charismatic, incredible way that people put him on a pedestal, right? And so I think that kind of touches on your point too, of, you know, other people invite you and kind of flow you into this leadership position. You don't stick yourself in there, right? Those are my 2 top leaders right now in my life, in my mind.
Do you know a strong correlation between the 2 of them? They don't put themselves on a pedestal, and they don't tear their competition down. They just grow themselves until their competition shrinks into insignificance.
Yes.
Interestingly, related to Senna, this is a tangent. I saw a video the other day. Do you know about Benetton cheating in the early 90s?
I heard about this story, but I'm not reminded.
So I watched a video the other day. In the first race of the 1994 season, which was Senna's last season, in the first race in Interlagos, he was crashed out. And so he sat on the sidelines and watched the rest of the race from the sidelines. And he listened to the cars going through this corner, and he noticed that the Benettons sounded different. And so he went back to his team and he was like, hey, have you guys listened to the cars driving? And they were like, no. And he was like, you need to go listen to the Benettons because they have traction control. And they would listen, and going through the corner on the exit, there was a very specific, it's light. You can't hear it unless you're listening for it, but it's an engine misfire. So they're throttling the engine as you're coming out of the corner for traction control. But traction control was illegal at the time, because in previous seasons, they had taken the wheel speed sensors from the front wheels and the rear wheels. They calculate the average across the front, average across the rear. If they're not the same, that means you have slippage. You need to throttle the engine back, right? And you can do that through the misfires or cutting spark, cutting fuel, right? Limiting airflow, whatever. There are several ways to do it. And ultimately, that makes the car faster. But that had been illegalized. So when they complained about it, Benetton said, we're not using wheel speed sensors, so we can't be using traction control. What they were doing was measuring the air pressure in the air manifold, in the intake manifold, because that dictates how fast you're going. And they can specify it down to what gear you're in, because in first gear, you can only be going X amount of speed. In second gear, you can only be going X amount of speed. And so based on the pressure in the intake manifold, they could tell where you were at in the course and how much throttle control you should be using.
Also, I'd assume that, you know, that's a really cool point. I love that. That's super interesting. And it's interesting because I was chasing I'm still chasing it, but I think I figured it out, a misfire code on the BMW. And I was looking at load values, like at idle, at mild acceleration and stuff like that. And so I noticed that, like, you know, I could be in second gear at 3,000 RPM with no load on it, and it would be like close to idle condition amount of air coming into my motor. But then if I get on it a little bit, there's a lot more air that comes. So I bet you could even calculate, you know, based on a load at certain speeds, if you were spinning the rear wheels or not, and therefore implementing traction control through that method too.
Right.
You know, that's a really interesting point.
in addition to that, so this isn't flexible. You can't change this on the go because it's the 90s, so you program it, right?
Right.
So they would program the traction control to work the best at the tire's peak condition. Because as the tires degrade, you want the car to slip more, not have more traction control. Because if you have more traction control, if peak traction control is at the worst point of the tire, when your tire has the most amount of life in it, it's limiting the engine when you have more grip available. And the drivers got pissed at that. So this was Schumacher. Schumacher said, make it work when the tire's at its best, because I can handle the slide as the tires get older, but I need to have the best grip available to me from the traction control when the tires are at their freshest.
Very interesting.
This was Senna's first title.
Very cool. Wow. I think I was thinking of a different story because that one is fascinating. I think I heard it before. Yeah.
Anyways, what are your top 3 things?
Please.
Can you say the question again?
Yes,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we went.
Yeah. What are the top 3 things that you think make a good leader?
Great. I think I'll be general, but I like your third point, which is leading by example. I think leading by example has a significant impact, not just to you as a person, to the people around you too, to give confidence to the people who are doing more physical work, and that actually encourages them, since like you're leading by example, they're looking at you, they're like, regardless of your position, you're actually putting the effort to try to do X and Y that is left for them to do. But going to my points, I would say during this time, since I'm in college, I do think the valuable things would be feedback. Take feedback from other people, because the way that people perceive you is very different than the way you perceive yourself.
Yeah.
So seek feedback from people who genuinely wish the best for you. That's my number 1. My number 2 is analyze within yourself, analyze your actions, analyze your skills, your performance, what could have been better, what could have been worse, what went bad, what went good.
And why.
And why.
Yeah.
And how to improve it. So analyzing that within yourself actually gives you a big advantage in order to become a good leader. The third one is practice, put it in practice. Now you identified it, you analyzed it, you know what you have done, and you know your performance at what percentage. Now, how do we take this to a higher level? Now, how do I increase my communication skills, my leadership skills, other skills? So analyze or feedback. Analyze, then practice. And I think these, if they are lined up very well, it will prepare you to be a better leader than who you are. And I think it actually goes down to a day-to-day basis. You don't have to become the best leader by next week. It's more about try to improve yourself from yesterday. Compare yourself to the person you were yesterday and try to be better from that point, and just take it as a competition between you and yourself.
Same thing with Alex Ramosi and Senna, like you brought up. They just worked on bettering themselves, and then they were put in positions of leadership. Right. What are your top 3?
So I was not taught to be a leader by anyone in particular. I was not instilled with a leadership quality from a young age. I played soccer, football, when I was a kid, and I was terrible at it. I would run from the ball. My dad would say, get aggressive, get in there, chase after the ball.
Just light tackle, bro. Just light tackle, bro.
Yeah, exactly right. And I would not do those things. I was scared. I didn't want physical contact. I didn't fucking care. I didn't want to get kicked in the face. I was scared of those things, and I was shit at soccer for those reasons. And then I went into karate, same deal. I didn't want to get hit. And generally speaking, I just was not a leader. I was not a competitor until I started rowing. And rowing taught me that it's more important for me to become a champion than a leader. And there's a poster that they had on the wall which compared what a novice rower, what a varsity rower, and what a champion are, the 3 differences. And I realized that I care about rowing so much, and I'm so aggressive with rowing, and I want to win so badly in rowing, that if you're in an area where people are telling you to get after the ball and get more aggressive, if you don't want to, change your sport. You're not in the right space. And I feel the same aggression towards business as I do with rowing. And that's particular because I know where I don't feel that. I don't feel that in the stock market. I didn't feel that in soccer. I do feel it with where we're at right now, and I did feel it with rowing. I know what that spark feels like.
Yeah.
So there are so many good things on this poster. Maybe we can throw it up on the screen or put it in the bio or something.
Yeah, of course.
But There you go. Omar's throwing it up for you. The three differences: a novice is self-centered. They think me first. A varsity member is team-oriented, but a champion is team-focused. They don't just think about the team. They work for the team, and they work with the team. A novice rower is a follower. A varsity is a contributor, and a champion takes initiative. They're a leader. A novice makes excuses. A varsity member has no excuses, and a champion seeks solutions. The really difference here between a varsity member and a champion is, do you take action? Another great one is a novice rower likes to race. They think it's fun. A varsity rower wants to race, but a champion needs to race. They need to win. It's a compulsion. And that's one of the three things that I've instilled, or I try to work towards, is the need to race successfully. And that's important when you're leading somebody, because you want your team to feel that what they're working on is important. Not that you want to do it. It's not, hey guys, we have to do this to meet our quota. It's, guys, this is important. This is a necessity. This is important. Another attribute is thriving under stress. So let's see here. This is also in my image here. A novice rower avoids stress. A varsity rower manages stress, and a champion thrives under stress. Can you work better under pressure than you do regularly? That's critical. And that's a tough one to practice, but by practicing it, it's important. And then finally, the most important one for me, I think, is to be team focused. Because if you are the leader of a team and your team doesn't feel that you care about them, they'll lose the motivation to work for you or work with you. I think that the core fundamental of being a leader is being able to inspire your team to accomplish the goals that you guys have set out to do. And if you can't do that effectively, if your team feels that you're, where's my row here? If your team feels that you are self-centered or just team-oriented, they won't follow you the same way they will if it's team-focused. If a leader cares more about the success of the team than the success of themselves, then they will achieve all the goals that they set out to.
Well, I have a great question about, you said you have to be aggressive with rowing. When it comes to rowing, you're more aggressive than when you play football. Right? And that aggression, it's an emotion, right? And then how do you handle that emotion? Is aggression a completely negative emotion, or is it a completely good emotion, or is it somewhere in between? How do you feel like you're delegating the emotion of aggression towards a sport like rowing?
I think aggression is impulse, right? It's like an instinct that you have to compete, to win, to beat, to fight, it's like a monster. Jordan Peterson talks about how young men need to become monsters and then learn how to control it. I think that what differentiates a leader from just a good athlete, like you could argue that there are tons of good athletes that are not leaders because they are all monster. They are just aggressive. They are just violent. They are just visceral, and they decimate the competition, but they're not good leaders. They aren't graceful in their victories. They aren't team focused. And, in not team sports, maybe that's something that you want, but I think that any good competitor, any good champion is graceful in losses and in victories. So with aggression, I think it's important to chain that monster up. Let it out when you're on the race course, but don't show it to other people. Don't be a dick. Don't be rude to other people. Win and lose with grace, and channel that aggression to fuel you when you need the fuel.
Well, I think that's one of the best fuels you can ever have. I think, especially when it comes during a critical time, like in the middle of the competition at the very last mile, that you need that aggression to be showed up, because that is what's going to make you do that extra mile.
Yep.
That's where you will stand up as a leader within the group of people you're rowing with.
Right.
And I think, I like your answer, and I think emotions can be called negative or positive, depends on how it's used and how you control that.
Right.
And emotional control is significant thing that today there are huge challenges among people.
Yeah. A lot of people struggle with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of weak men.
There are soft men.
So they're going to leave us with hard times.
Yeah, they are. One of the quotes I have is related to that aggression, in the last mile. It's, you can beat 50% of your competition by consistently showing up and working hard. You can beat the next 40% by doing things with urgency and detail. The last 10% is simply a dogfight. And that last 10% is where that aggression comes in. If you don't have that compulsion to get after it, you're not going to win. And I did not have that compulsion with soccer. or football, which is why I didn't excel there. But I did with rowing and I do with business. And that's why I have such confidence that I'll succeed in business.
That's good, because I really believe that people should follow the sport where like they actually enjoy. They feel like they're improving, not just within the same sport, but also in different aspects. It's like starting to affect them and giving them more tools to help them go through life and become better people and increase their value as human beings.
I think the majority of the tools I have, I can contribute directly to it. I mean, this whole chart, there's fucking 35 rows of different things in here. Yeah. It's a map on how do you become a better person. And all you have to do is follow it. Anyways.
Yeah. Is there anything, some last points or last thoughts that you want to leave the audience?
Well, I would just like to mention that everybody should try to better themselves, to become better than yourself yesterday. Try to improve yourself. One of the things that I've been recently doing and enjoy, it's seeking discomfort. Yeah. By seeking discomfort, that's a huge growth opportunity. And all we need now is to better ourselves in order to become better people so we can contribute to society and make it a better place and leave a significant positive impact on the world. Everything starts within yourself. Everybody should sit, get feedback from the people around them of who they believe they are, analyze that within yourself, see the things that you would like to change or give it a shot, try to change, and then take the actions, practice, do more things, seek uncomfortableness, and then try to better yourself.
Yeah. It's difficult for people to take criticism like that. I've got a quote relating to it. This isn't my final point, but it's criticism points out a difference between a goal and a reality. An insult applies a judgment on the difference. So if someone is giving you criticism, they're simply saying, hey, this is what you set out to do. This is what is actually happening. Letting you know there's a difference here. If you want to hit your goals, you need to make a change. And an insult is saying you're a bad person for not following what you said you're going to do. And it's really challenging, I find, for people to understand that and follow that. But by understanding the difference, you become coachable and you become adaptable and you can allow yourself to become a better person through your work. Mm-hmm. If you don't recognize that, even if you think you're becoming a better person, you're not. Because if you can't recognize your shortcomings, then how are you supposed to progress?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something that I struggle with, that I've been working on recently and over the past years, and I think that's a great point. And that's a valuable distinction that I think a lot of people struggle with, including myself, so I like that a lot.
Yeah.
What would you like to close us out with?
I have a final segment, and this is a new thing. And I want to start ending every podcast on that, because if our listeners have made it to the end of the podcast, this is a wide-ranging discussion. Every week it is. We have a lot of different topics that we talk about, and there's a lot of value in it. And I don't want to leave the listener kind of frazzled with 100 different things that they've learned from the podcast. Mm-hmm. At the end of the podcast, take what you can from it, and then I'll leave you on this final note. I'm going to call it the dial-in section. This is where you get focused again. You get back to work. Take your fucking earbuds out and get back to work on whatever goal that you have. This is what we're going to do after the podcast. As soon as we're done, we're going to I'm going to eat something because I haven't eaten yet today. And then we're going to fucking log in. So dial in on this note. It's an Alex Hormozi quote. Youth, free time, money. Pick two.
Agreed. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation. Thank you for coming on, Omar. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as our first guest.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, it's our pleasure. So be well, enjoy the rest of your week, and pursue those goals.
Better yourself.